Welcome, everybody. Highland City Council. Today is May 19th, and it looks like we have everybody here. So we'll go ahead and get started with a prayer by Councilmember Smith and the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Campbell.
Our kind Father in heaven, we are thankful this evening for the privilege and honor of meeting together as representatives of the citizens of Highland. We're thankful for this free country. We're thankful this time of year for the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and for the blessings we have as people in a free land and with representative and constitutional republic government. We ask you to bless us this evening, that we may have thy spirit, that we may have good discussions concerning the items on the agenda, and that we may be responsive to the needs of our citizens. And these things we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we can move on to unscheduled public appearances. So if anybody has any comments about anything on the agenda tonight or just generally, we are happy to hear those now. I have one comment card from Claudia. So if you want to come up and get started, welcome. It's nice to see you.
No.
Oh, thank you. Okay. I just wanted to share 3 testimonials that I thought you might enjoy listening to about the value of libraries. The first one is from Dieter F. Uchtdorf about an experience he had in his life. He said, I got a job at a research institution that had a large library. I remember spending much of my free time in that library. There I could finally drink in the information and knowledge that books provide. How I love to read and learn. In those days, I understood firsthand the words of an old saying, education is not so much the filling of a bucket as the lighting of a fire. The second I want to share with you is a book from our library that I checked out. It's called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Maybe you've heard of it. It was made into a Netflix documentary in 2019 about a young man named William Kamkwam from Malawi, Africa. And when he was young, he was 13 in the year 2000, his family was experiencing severe hunger because of a drought. They just had enough food for one meal a day. And they didn't have water, they didn't have electricity. And so he could not afford a fee to go to secondary school, but he went to the library of his sister's primary school and just sat there and read. And one book he picked up one morning was called Using Energy. And it showed a windmill in California from the nonprofit from America who had donated the books. And so he was so excited and intrigued with the idea that he could build a windmill and be able to pump water and have electricity. And so he went on his quest. He went back to the little library many times and read more books, science books, math books, physics books. And so he was able to then finally build a windmill and get electricity and water to his own home and then to the entire village. He and his wife, who met at Dartmouth where he got a scholarship, now run a nonprofit foundation that help people in Africa. Also, recently, as friends of the library, we've been able to visit with families and see what they think about libraries. And one family that we were taking the certificate to, who was chosen by the staff to be the Highland Library Patron of the Year, we went to their small basement apartment where they had 3 little children, and they showed us all the books that they were so excited to be able to read. And they had crates of books. We didn't see any toys, but we saw lots of books. Last week at the city open house, we appreciated the opportunity to meet with residents also. One told us that her family, when they couldn't afford preschool, they had the library, and they could have their kids go to the library and go to story time and check out lots of books. Also, some of them told us about how much they value Libby and how much they value the consortium, where they can have hundreds of thousands of access to materials from other libraries, which keeps us here in Highland from having to build a larger library or enlarge the one we have, so it saves money. We're so grateful for the city councils for considering the small tax increase. I know this isn't a budget night tonight, but I just want you to know that we'd really appreciate you to keep these services, that would keep these services going at our library, which is probably the only city department that in the last 18 years hasn't had a tax increase or an increase in revenues during this time of inflation and growth. Who knows what book will inspire the members of your family, or which Highland resident will be inspired by a book they check out at the Highland Library, and then go on to create something wonderful with their own life and with our community, and perhaps even make an impact on the entire world. Thank you so much, City Council members, for all you do to meet the needs of the Highland residents.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment? We don't have any public hearings tonight, so this is your opportunity. Yes, come forward. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to be slipping. I lost a crown on the way here. The good news is it's not broken, but the bad news is I swallowed it.
Oh, that is bad news.
There's two. I know my time is limited, so I just printed these. I just wanted to show you on the map that our piece of property is listed as open space.
Mayor, is it okay if we wait for her time to start until she's able to be at a microphone?
I haven't had a chance
Yes,
to
that's
circle
fine.
it, 'cause I kind of got panicked about my tube.
You're okay.
Understandable.
You're okay.
Okay, so I opened it, but if you'll look right.
Thank you.
So on your city map, it just shows it as the light green as open space, but it's actually our property along the highway. So I'll show you that. I think I might have circled yours.
Oh, I'll give it.
No, here. There you go. That might help you a little bit better. I've got one circled. Hey, so
Okay. Can you go on up to the microphone and let us know your name for the record? Thank you.
it's Angie Channer, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Cottages on the Green. And we run along the highway. We have almost an acre along the highway. When you turn into the country club, you can see all of our big green trees and our berms. On the map, it's showing up as open space. And it also shows the two little ponds that we used to have on our HOA. I don't know if I gave everyone if you can see that. They no longer are there. We filled them in because we had a lot of people from Highland that wanted to swim in them. So they've been filled in about 20 years, but they're still showing up on the map. So someone can take those off. Now it's just green fields right there. If you'll notice on the location of our property to what you guys are on other maps are showing as the town center, I'm hoping as these new restaurants come in north of Timpanogos, you'll consider the antiquated properties, how it affects us. I'm not sure if any of you guys live within a half a mile of the town center, but people are coming up the highway much faster than 45. I know we have bike lanes on the highway, but I can tell you the only people who are on those bike lanes are like cyclist teams, because no one in their right mind with their family is going to ride on the highway where cars are going 50 miles an hour with their kids. They're all riding on the sidewalks, which even you've had posted. Don't ride on the sidewalks, use the road. They stop in our piece of property. We have a little bike trail inside our piece of property. It's pretty run down, but we have people hanging out in there now. If you look on the map, how close we are to the new park. since the park has opened, we have had a lot of problems with people hanging out in our private property. And although we bermed it many years ago to try to deafen the sound from the road, the noise is terrible, the traffic is terrible. And then there's 2 pieces of property that are north of us. They're the 2 oldest properties on the highway. They don't have a fence. They're right on the corner where you have drawn a red box around what you consider Highlands City business area. That's also where all the new trails are being fixed. So you're connecting a bunch of trails that go across, like east to west through Highland. You're fixing those trails and connecting them, and they're all verging right there in our area, those bike trails. So we have concerns. We're hoping that you'll look at the businesses you're bringing in and asking them to pay for us to have some security with a fence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to comment? Yeah.
So I was given the assignment at,
Could you give us your name, please?
oh yeah,
Thank you.
Wayne Stewart. Okay, all right. So I was given the assignment to go find the paperwork for the extra water bill that we were receiving up through about September, October of last year, going back decades. And I've been talking to a lot of the elderly homeowners in my neighborhood, which is about 6530 West, north of 9600. And a lot of that paperwork is buried in storage units, boxes and stuff like that. So it's an ongoing effort here to find those documents. The overall assumption was that we were buying into paying for the infrastructure in exchange for either having water shares or water rights that would preclude us from being metered. And we understand that the state is making a mandate. However, that doesn't preclude the fact that the city has been taking money every month for decades from us up until last fall. So the request is that we consider, when you're considering what the bills should be going forward for pressurized irrigation as secondary water, that extra amount that's been paid for by a lot of the legacy homeowners in the city be considered and repaid. Even though it's a state mandate, the state's kind of forcing you into a breach of contract. And so we're trying to collect the evidence and the paperwork to support that assumption. And it's, we've had about 4 or 5 days to work on it, but we're digging through storage units and looking for the paperwork to do that. So just wanted to give you a report on the progress there. Also wanted to let you know that, the different members of the council aren't individuals. Each one of you represents a constituency. And so, we were invited to come out and speak regarding, contentions or whatever that happen among the council. But remember, you represent the people who voted for you. So when you're dealing with other people in the council, remember that you're not just talking to that person, you're talking to everybody that represents them. And I'm not the only one that thinks this way. And I just happen to be one that showed up to talk about that and to say, listen, you're not individuals, you're not a club. You represent a significant group of people that back every single one of you. So just keep that in mind as you go forward and you deliberate and debate. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we do have pressurized irrigation rates as a work session tonight after the meeting. Perfect. Would anybody else like to make a comment? No, then we can move on to our presentations, starting with Paul Watterson. And just a reminder that we are committed to act with civility and respect. So go ahead and come on up. Directed at nobody.
I have a reputation.
Hey, Paul.
Thank you. thank you, Mayor Bills, and the City Council for inviting us to make a presentation tonight. I want to especially thank Aaron Wells, who's been really instrumental in helping us get this project going, along with Chris Trustee. So again, thank you very, very much. And of course to Dr. Scott Smith, who helped us get the Highland City Foundation going, and along with Ed Dennis, who's been amazing, by the way, too. So thank you to so many people. Behind me are, I call them the Dirty Dozen, but they're amazing neighbors who have stuck it out with this thing for the past year and a half. So, and appreciate them coming tonight. Twin Bridges is what we're talking about tonight. Twin Bridges is a neighborhood that derives its name from two roads that enter the main entrance and a secondary entrance over two culverts. Those are our bridges, but it's a really great name, Twin Bridges. And so there is no HOA. We have no HOA, which would have made things a lot easier on this project. But we don't like HOAs, right? So anyway, so a group of neighbors, we started this project just by talking, neighbor to neighbor. We started saying, you know, the entrance to our neighborhood is quite run down and dilapidated, falling over. The columns are literally leaning. You can make them wobble. The metal posts are rotting out. They're rusting through, I should say. And so it's in bad shape. And so talking with each other, we thought, well, we need to do something. Who's going to do it? And we decided, let us do it. We did talk to the city, who told us that the property had been deeded to the city by the developer who originated the property, development of the property. So the city owns the property, maintains that property, but it's just, I understand it's a rather unique situation. So we have an entrance to our neighborhood that's not controlled by our HOA. We don't have an HOA. It's owned by the city, but it's falling apart. The motif or whatever, the sign that's coming in, it's not in great shape. So over the past year and a half, we met together as a group of interested neighbors and had a steering committee, if you will. We examined several different ideas from our entire neighborhood. We looked at several different plans. We discussed it strongly about different ideas, and we developed a consensus amongst us to come up with this particular plan that you see in front of you. We were aided again by the city and again by Aaron Wells, who helped us get started. We were able to put some money in together to develop a good plan that could be approved by the city. And so this plan was developed and then approved later by the city. Next, we asked for bids. We asked to get contractors to get us bids, and we got two bids, one for $160,000 and another for $92,000. And of course, we chose the $92,000. And it's, I think I'm really excited about it, honestly. It could be really wonderful. We then had to raise the money, and we split our neighborhood up into groups and then went out and canvassed the entire neighborhood, door to door. And that's a little awkward when you're trying to raise money with your neighbors. It's a little awkward to go up and say, hey, would you like to donate? And then have to follow up. But we did it, and we persisted, and we were able to get $66,000. And it's not quite 92, which is what we were striving for. But I will say that the neighborhood responded amazingly well. We have a really broad support from the entire neighborhood, and some gave as much as they could, and others much, much more. And so, good. Let's see. So we got the Highland City Foundation up and running. And now the foundation has been really good because it's helped us get these donations as tax deductible, which also is a big help. So during our fundraising campaign, though, we noticed that there were some neighbors who were original to the neighborhood and who expressed some dismay that they had been assessed a impact fee of some kind. I'm not sure what it was. It's before we moved into the neighborhood. It's probably before most everyone behind. I don't know. We heard this though from neighbors. Hey, we were assessed an $8,000. I don't know how much it was. I don't know anything about it other than it was a good amount, an impact fee, and they felt like they never saw the results from that. So we promised to bring it up with the city council. And so here we are. But that's not our main reason. Our main reason is to try to see if we can get monies from the city to help us finish this project. That's our big ask. The bid was $92,000. We've raised $65,000. Maybe a little bit more will come in. So we got the bid several months ago. I'm not sure if the price will go up. I don't know if there'll be a cost overrun, but we're hopeful and we're excited to proceed. And we appreciate your allowing us to come. And we would ask if we could enter into some kind of arrangement where we could get some funds from the city to help us finish this project. We're shy of about $27,000, and that's where we stand. I'm open for questions now.
Perfect. Thank you. We really appreciate your work. It's so nice to have somebody bring a problem and come with a solution as well.
Thank you.
Let's start with Councilwoman Rodella, and I'm just interested to know if you are interested in this coming back as an agenda item.
Yes, very interested, and they have my full support that the city helps pay for the rest of it since it is owned by the city and supposed to be maintained by the city.
Councilmember Smith?
I agree with that. And on the impact fees, we need to look at that pretty carefully. So there were open space fees and impact fees that were paid, and we used part of those to develop the park there, but the park's never been finished. And that's been kind of one of my priorities to finish that. We'd like to get a pavilion and then a few things, but we'll have to kind of research how much on the impact fees, because that all happened when that neighborhood was developed after the turn of the century, basically. And I think in 2012, we built, part of the park, but it was in a 5-phase thing, and only about 1.5 of the phases have been done, maybe 2 now, because you have the restroom. So we need to look and see what's left from those original impact fees.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Courtney, are you interested in bringing this back?
I am interested in bringing it back, and I'd just like to say, Scott, that I am old enough that I was shocked to hear how old that development was when you said it was just after the turn of the century.
Well,
because to me, the turn of the century is 1900.
No, but 2000 to, we turned another century.
That does make it seem
Old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Campbell, are you interested in bringing this back?
100%. I just have to say that this is what I call leveraging our tax dollars. I mean, you've gone out and raised all this money, and I remember years ago, this goes back so far that it shows my age, but I used to have to talk to legislators and say, if I give you $1, or if you give me $1, I'll give you 5. What do you think? And, well, it's called federal money, and if you contribute in the state, this is along the same lines. We give you $1, you give us back $3 or $4 to work on property that we own. It belongs to the city. The entire city will benefit from this, not just the neighbors in Twin Peaks. It's a slam dunk. This leverages, we give this much, we get this much out of it. I fully support this.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Rice?
I really do support it, especially when you've raised the money and you've certainly made a huge effort, and this isn't all on the city. So thank you for doing that. I really admire that. And I don't know if anybody has looked at their pictures of how dilapidated that is. I'm hoping that the council will take a close look. I was early and got to look at that. So it's really deteriorated. It's not just a matter of, it's gone pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know, Chris, if you had those pictures. You have the other pictures of the, anyway, I can bring these up.
Advance.
Aaron?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't there insurance money possibly associated with this as
Yeah,
well.
so Paul's been working with us on this. Ironically, while we were going through this process, a teenage driver ran into the dilapidated entryway. My understanding is they're okay, so we can talk about it lightly. But so we're still negotiating with the insurance company, hoping for around $15,000 to help with that gap. But based on the direction of the council, Madam Mayor, I think what we'll do is we'll put it on a future agenda to have the city contribute the remainder of the funds between the donations, the insurance, and the remainder, basically.
Perfect. I think that would be great. And council, if you have any further questions, we can ask them to staff between now and our next.
And one good news for the neighborhood, we have in the budget for next fiscal year putting a pavilion in your park, and the council has supported that so far. So I know it's not the full, thank council because that was their priority at the budget retreat, but that I know that's not the full of the phases that Councilmember Smith was talking about, but we're trying to take some baby steps for you. So.
Am I correct in understanding, Aaron, that somebody ran into the fence and it is now dilapidated?
Was before, and that only contributed to the worsening of it.
We paid someone to run into that fence.
Don't say,
Well
you're
done.
on public record, Paul.
I'm sorry. Actually, I really don't want to talk about it because we are in negotiations, the city is, with the insurance carrier. Because to replace that entire fence, because you can't match it, would cost a lot more.
Yeah.
So but I don't really want to go into the insurance right now.
Thank you. We appreciate the effort and stay tuned.
Okay.
Kevin,
Yeah.
just one comment. Kevin Ash, I'm on the committee. One thing we didn't cover is maintenance. The design we've come up with, we've tried to make maintenance free. Currently, one of the problems with the corrosion that we're getting on the ironworks is that the sprinkler systems are spraying directly on. We thought that we'd discover some kind of a drip system, but that's not what's there. And we thought that it could be coming from snow and ice. I'm sure that contributes to it, but I think the new design, when we put it in, we're asking for a drip system, rock, so there's not a lot of vegetation to worry about in the maintenance. So ongoing, that came up in our conversations with who's going to maintain it. I think that it would fall on the city, but we would, as citizens, have tried to mitigate a long-term maintenance issue.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great information. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Erin.
I think I'm next, right?
Yes.
Okay. Chris, thank you, neighbors. We appreciate that. Mayor, I wanted to take a minute and introduce the council to our new employee. She intended to be here tonight, but turns out her brother is graduating from high school tonight, so she is celebrating with her family. But you might have gotten a chance to meet her at the open house, but her name is Emma Van Dyke, and she is our new assistant events coordinator. She just started with us in the last week or so and has been really fantastic. She's currently a student at BYU studying experience management, so she also has some work experience as well in this field. So she's done great so far, and we're excited to have you guys get to know her.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to consent items, it looks like we just have one tonight.
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council approve the consent item 3A, the approval of the meeting minutes from April 29th, 2026.
I second.
It's a motion by Councilmember Courtney and second by Councilwoman Rice, and we can go ahead and vote. Perfect, that passes 5-0. On to our action items. So the first item is the 2026 maintenance package, and we're going to try to let staff get through their whole presentations, and then we'll start with Councilmember Smith for comments or questions.
I did try to keep the presentation a little bit simple, but we've got our presentation package that we put out annually. This includes some reconstruct on 5600 West, 10480 North, and Granite Circle. We've used some bonded matrix on 9600 North and 6000 West, and then high-density bonded matrix at 11350 North, 5830 West, and then certain streets around the Ridgeview subdivision. That's part of their bond payment that they've actually made to the city for the city to do that high-density bond. So it's kind of a pass-through cost on those newer subdivisions like that. We've kind of broken this down. The low bid for items in Schedule A would go to Geneva Rock, and then Schedules B and C would go to Holbrook Asphalt, kind of as noted. So if there's questions at the council, I'd like to...
Explain Ridgeview again, because those are basically new roads. So explain what you were saying.
So on all new subdivisions, they're required to post a bond with the city that we will then use to put down the high-density bonded matrix on the road after it's been there for a couple of years as kind of an initial preservation on the newer roads.
So it's actually been paid for?
It's been paid for by the developers.
Oh, okay, very good. Now, what are you doing on 9600? Exactly?
9600 is a bonded matrix that we'll be placing.
Okay.
And then restriping.
Okay. Explain to me a little more. I know it's in the packet and stuff, but I'm not an engineer. Bonded matrix.
It's a surface treatment. You know, our other package is a reconstruct where they go up and tear up the road and then kind of replace it when we have base damage especially. But if it's more of an asphalt reconditioning, then the bonded matrix will help restore the asphalt portion of it. It's kind of a, like I said, a surface treatment. More of a, not necessarily intended to treat like the base or kind of the sub-base underneath the asphalt section. It's intended to treat the base itself, the asphalt section itself.
How is it different than a seal coat?
It's a little bit more structurally sound than a seal coat. A seal coat is, you know, kind of like painting with an emulsion. You know, it's just a spray on, and this has more of an aggregate base to it. So when they're putting it down, it's got much more of a structural value to it.
Okay, so it's thicker.
It's thicker.
For we laymen, okay, thicker. Okay.
Thicker. It's got little rocks in it, and yeah.
Okay, very good.
Aggregate.
Councilmember Courtney, questions?
I don't have any questions about this other than what's in the agenda packet, but Aaron, just a quick, if when we get together tomorrow, if we could talk just briefly about kind of how we track that funding that we get from developers. And I've got a note down here too, but wanted to give you a heads up rather than just springing it on you at 4:30.
Thanks for bringing that up, Doug. I think that's important.
Councilmember Campbell?
The only question I had you answered, which had to do with Ridgeview, why it seems really soon, but I really appreciate the fact that we're taking steps that will prolong the life of those roads. The sooner we get to that, wish we could do it on every road in Highland that was needing it, but I applaud that, so thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Rice?
I too appreciate what you've done, especially on 9600 North. I watched them the other day filling the cracks, and that road is in rough shape, as you well know. So I get lots of calls on that all the time. And so this is low bid, or do you just ask them? I can't remember what you told me on this, Chris.
This is low bid. We've kind of broken up the packages so that the reconstruct, we went with one contractor, and then the other, the bonded matrix and the high density, we went with another contractor for those. So.
Okay. And you've dealt with these guys before?
We've dealt with these guys before. Our street superintendent called me 5 minutes after we got the bids and asked who it was because he was hoping it was not somebody who it was not.
Okay.
So, of course, I told him it was just to give him a hard time. But no, we actually are very pleased with the two contractors.
That's great. And I really appreciate you, Chris. You spend a lot of time answering my questions all the time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Rodella?
Nope, I'm great. You did a great job of explaining it.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're
I'm happy to make a motion,
perfect. Thank you.
except they just eliminated the motion. Okay, hang on. Whoops. Okay. I move that the Highland City Council approve awarding the 2026 roads project to the following contractors: Schedule A, items 2 through 5, 11 through 16, to Geneva Rock in the amount of $961,868.49. They couldn't round that up. That's interesting. Okay. Schedules B and C, items 6 through 9, to Holbrook Asphalt in an amount up to $604,473.86. So this includes the contingency funds,
It is.
correct? The 10%
Yep.
in both.
And I'll second that.
Perfect. That was Councilmember Smith with the motion and Councilmember Rice with the second, and we're ready for a vote. Oh, you're good. And that passes 5-0. We have Chris again for action item 4B.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I might back up just a second when we
Sure.
talked about our road preservation projects. We do have LTAP that we've talked about before. They'll actually be coming out sometime this month to start doing their road evaluations so that we'll be able to work on actually having a planned annual list of projects for the council. So it will be a little bit less picking and choosing by staff and a little bit more fact-based. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Our next project is a bid award for culinary tank lids. This is a project that we've included in our capital improvement plan, and we've budgeted money for it this year. So we solicited bids to put some earth over our two tanks. It just helps protect them from the elements. It helps protect them from vandalism, and it helps hopefully provide a little bit of insulation to the tanks. Some of the problems that we've had with some of our numbers have to do with higher temperatures in the tank. So we're hoping that, especially with the Beacon Hills tank, helps to kind of alleviate some of those issues that we've had. And that really does conclude my presentation. So.
Perfect. Councilmember Courtney, do you have any questions?
Just one question, and sorry, I should have added this in my list when we talked earlier. When we need to do maintenance on these tanks, do we just remove the cover that we've just added on, or what?
Well, I've never had to do maintenance on
Inside?
the top lid of a tank. We've usually go inside to do that. So we would still have the access portals. We would still be able to go in there. But that's usually where I've always seen all the maintenance. I've never had to see it. But I guess if something, we would have to probably do periodic inspections just to make sure everything looks good. But for the most part, it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and even if it's something that we need to deal with every now and then, it sounds like it's still a worthwhile thing to do. So,
yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
Have any questions?
And Councilmember Rice?
So, do we get a lot of vandalism up there? I mean,
Occasionally, not a ton. We do have both of these sites fenced, so we haven't seen much, but.
okay. No, I don't really have any questions. I just was curious when you said that. Thanks.
Nope, no questions. We already talked about it. I'm great.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, I just want to understand what you mean by the lid. You're putting dirt on top? What does that mean? How thick is it?
It'll be a foot thick, so we've just got the lid, the concrete flat surface on the top of it. We'll just be building about a foot of earth over the top of that. We did go back to make sure that the structural design of this would accept that. And part of the whole contract that we have is that the contractor won't use anything heavier than a skid steer to place it and level it out. But yeah, it'll just be about 12 inches of dirt on top of it.
So I assume there'll be native vegetation growing there?
There'll be native vegetation growing there.
Okay, but you have the area fenced off, so they know that it's there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how do you mark the perimeter of it?
Usually what you do is we'll slough it down once we get to the edges of it. So
Okay.
you'll be able to see an outline
Exactly
of it.
where it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm?
Very good. And what type of dirt do you use?
We'll use some fill material that we have that we've already stockpiled. It's fairly granular. It doesn't have a whole lot of clay in it. We did have a resident reach out and say that they had some additional dirt that they could donate for this. It had a lot of clay to it. I've got concerns that clay might add additional weight to it, so I'm not sure that
Especially
we
when it's
really
wet.
want to
Yeah.
go with it exactly. So it's kind of a sandy loam, I think, mostly what we have right now. It doesn't have to be particularly great dirt, but just
So if you put an edge around, I'm sorry to ask a lot of questions about it, it's just, I'm curious about it. I've never heard of a lid for the culinary water tank, so I'm just trying to understand it. So is it sloped? Is there going to be erosion on it, or?
it'll be pretty flat. There could be some erosion. We might have to build it up every once in a while, just along the edges of it. We'll go over the entire roof of it, and right now the dirt is at least a couple feet down on the sides, so we'll just kind of slough it off on kind of around the tank to match in with the existing.
So water will drain off of it. It won't pool water on top of it.
Shouldn't pull water on top of it.
Okay. Okay, I was just curious. But you'll have a portal so you can get in the tank if you need
Absolutely.
to?
Yeah, we'll still have our access portal, and we still have our air venting system for the 2 tanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move that the City Council award the bid for Highland City Tank Lid Project to Baker Construction in the amount of up to $58,080.
I second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Campbell and a second by Councilwoman Rice. Perfect, 5-0. And on to, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Action item 4C. Erin. And again, we'll let her get through her presentation, and then we'll start with Councilmember Campbell for questions.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So what we're talking about here is an agreement with Central Utah Water to partner with us on our Yapify, our communication platform. And so just as a summary, in case you don't know, Yapify is the city's communication tool. So it's what we use when we send out like mass notifications via text or email. We can use phone calls when we need to. We haven't to this point. It's also our two-way texting tool, so when people text the city, it's through the Yapify program. When we first signed up with Yapify 3 years ago, it was as a part of our PI meter rollout, and at that time it was free through a state grant, ultimately, and that 3 years has come and gone, and Yapify has proven a great program, but all of a sudden we're now having to pay the bill. When that was coming due, Yapify reached out to us and say, hey, we have a proposal for you. Let's partner with Central Utah to continue some cost sharings. So what this would do is we would need to use Yapify for conservation efforts. Central Utah would require that. Ultimately, there was a lot of, I got some questions and concerns from council, as we should, about privacy, right? So who controls our data at that point, right, with our residents and customer information? So the city would still maintain control over our messaging, when we send out the message, what exactly that looks like. Essentially, Yapify and Central Utah would partner together to give us some template messages, and there are certain things that they would ask us to send out, like related to overusage and things like that. But the city ultimately remains in control. And while Yapify obviously has our customer information because it is their database, they can't share that information with other parties, and anything shared with Central Utah will be anonymized to protect privacy. So in talking with Stephanie, we feel like it meets our obligations for privacy with the state overall. With that, this would be a 3-year pilot program that Central Utah is proposing at this time, where they pay a portion of the bill and we pay a portion. Their portion would gradually reduce over time and ours would increase. And then in year 4, we would decide Central Utah would decide moving forward, does this make sense for them to continue with us doing this? The first year, the amount that we would owe in the first year is in the current fiscal year, or not the current fiscal year budget, the tentative budget for fiscal year 27 that council recently approved. So we have to provide customer information to Yapify, which they already have. ultimately, and anonymize that information for Central Utah, and send regular notifications regarding leak alerts, high water usage. But the good news about Yapify is they are really trying to help it be as automated as possible. So while it still does take some staff time, they're really helping us to try to cut down on that amount of staff time. Because as you know, our communications person is part-time and does not just this, but social media and everything else for the city. So Yapify will use that meter data for leak detection, right? Help us to understand when our residents possibly have a leak, so we can communicate with them. And then Central Utah will do what they always do, provide us conservation information, and then continue to manage those rebate programs that do exist. And I think that is my summary, Madam Mayor.
Do you have an amount for next year?
Should I have put that in the presentation? I should have. I'm sure it's in the packet. My recollection is about $7,500 for the city. I do not remember Yapify's amount. I apologize. I'm having to look it up in the packet myself.
It's in the packet.
In the packet, the first year is listed as 7,452.
Perfect.
Total's like 25,000.
Thank you. Councilmember Campbell, do you have any questions?
I don't. I do have a comment in terms of utilizing this. We had how many years free?
3.
3 years free, and now it's going to phase. We're taking more. And the question from the beginning is, if we had to pay for it all, would we still want this program? And I believe the answer is yes. I believe it is doing what we want it to do.
I have yet to find another program that does everything that Yapify does. I remember in the beginning, there was a resident actually who, because we were debating starting a texting program for the city, and we were debating, because we had one, but it's called Everbridge, and the public safety departments use it, but it's really meant more for for emergency management. You guys might have all gotten an Everbridge text and you don't know it necessarily. Dispatch sends them out. They work great sometimes, but sometimes they inadvertently send it to a wider radius or the message is unclear. And so for a lot of reasons, we decided to switch away from Everbridge. And we were deciding between 2 different platforms, Yapify and another one that a resident was developing. The resident's development was 2-way, but it didn't also have the mass notification. And so, sorry, this is a long answer for me to say I have yet to find a program that does everything we want it to do like Yapify does. At least for this grant cost, for sure, of what we're talking about at this point.
I do wish that, I know it's an opt-in, and I would want it to be an opt-in, but the downside is not everybody opts in.
Yes.
So we don't have the spread that we would like to have. However, I don't know of any other option.
And let me clarify opt-in versus opt-out. When they sign up for utilities, we can still reach out to them if it is utility-based, because we have their information because it's utilities. But they have to opt in it's our services, like if they want to hear about upcoming city events or city council meetings, those that are more specific, they have to opt in for those. But we can talk to anybody about water because that's what they have to work with us with the city for water.
It's one thing and it's great for the Conservancy District to give us great information, but that information has to get out to the residents. And that's where Yapify comes in, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's probably the best one out there, but I do wish everybody would opt in.
That would be nice.
Councilmember Rice?
So I'm kind of with them on that. I wish everybody would opt in, and I've spent time. Now, so is this what when I get my alerts on my PI, this is what this comes from, right? Because it's really amazing. Because I've rationed my water for 2 times a week, and it'll send me an alert if I've overused.
Oh, fantastic.
Or hey, you put, because you can go in and you can say, if this is how many thousands of gallons I need to do my PI on, it'll send me an alert. If I went over, I can go back in and adjust it, to go down even more or up if I need to, if I haven't hit my 65,000 gallons.
And let me correct something I said. What you're talking about is our meter system, which works with Yapify.
It does work with that. But it's not exactly.
It's not the exact same thing.
Okay. But they will retrieve that probably from our meters, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I think it's pretty amazing, and I appreciate you answering my other questions about the security and whatnot. So that's about it. Thanks.
Councilwoman Rodella?
Love Yapify.
Councilmember Smith?
So I just have some questions that, and I want to clarify things. Delineate the difference between the Central Utah project, which brings all the water into this area, or a lot of it, and the Central Utah Water Conservation District, which I believe we all pay property tax into, a degree of it, if you look at your property tax receipt. So tell me, are they two distinct items? Because we oftentimes confuse them because they have very similar names.
These are the same entities, correct, Chris? And why don't you,
That
would be better.
Central Utah Water Conservancy District is the overall district that manages the Central Utah project and a few other projects.
Okay, so they're one and the same.
They're yeah.
Kind of.
Kind of. One's more the umbrella company that runs the program. The CUP is more of a program.
Right.
But it's the same entity.
But it seems like when I went through my property tax thing, we pay some property tax into them. And so they're actually kind of returning some of that property tax when they help with this. And of course, they're interested in conservation. So I wanted to clarify that because I've always thought they were one and the same. At the same time, I hear two distinct things. So, okay, that's helpful. So when I read through this Shopify, and I think it's a great program and support it, I see mainly talking about residential properties. How about the city's parkways, the school district, and commercial things? Does it monitor theirs?
Our meter, so everywhere has a meter, including our parks, and actually we'll talk about that a little bit later when we discuss potential future rates, right, and what does council want that to look like. But yes, in theory, it would monitor all of those as well. We would need to, again, Chris will go into detail on this, but we'll need to set tiers for those groups as well, right, the schools and things, right, because they would be in a different classification than a residential property would.
Right. I wondered if they got notified by Yapify because I've driven by Mountain Ridge Junior High, and I brought this up before, but they're still watering half the street on 10-400 when their sprinklers are on along that, and it sprays out into the cars. And I think in a drought year, someone needs to say, can you adjust your sprinkler heads?
We reached out to them, but let me put another poke at them. So
yeah,
I appreciate
this
knowing
was just
that it hasn't
last week.
changed.
I just happened to pass by when their sprinklers are on, but it's in the street and we're wasting water. The other thing, are our parkways metered too, Chris? So there was a geyser on the corner of 9910 and Alpine Highway that stayed there for a few days. It got marked with a red flag, and I think you fixed it, but there was a lot of water that went into the gutter there. So I just think if Yapify is notifying us on those things, we need to, especially in a dry year when we're going to be restricting fluid, we need to be a good example as a city. And I know it's impossible to maintain everything, but that was a pretty visible geyser. So I have people saying, yeah. So we just got to be sure they get fixed quick. Okay. That was kind of my question. So I support Yapify. I just wondered if it involved not only residential properties, but everything. Because when I read through the stuff, it seems like it's real focused on residential.
You're right, it really had been, but I think that's an interesting idea because all of our parks aren't, they don't have a smart clock, right? And we can't easily turn them off and on like you discussed, Councilmember Smith, but that's an interesting idea of using Yapify as a tool for our own notification, right?
Right.
Because we don't know unless we've driven by or unless somebody's told us, right, that there is a geyser. So wherever, and we had one, call it Merlin Larson Park, and one over Greens at Highland. It's been a rough couple weeks for the Parks Department.
Right.
So.
I appreciate all their work, but yeah.
May I speak for just, I was out there at 9:30 one night, right, with you or texting you at Larson Park, but if I could just add, kind of piggyback on what maybe Scott said, I noticed that, our stake center was watering in the middle of the day at 92-degree weather, the only day that we've really had 92-degree weather, and I did call the stake, and, they didn't even know. They weren't even aware, and they made the adjustment, so I don't know if we can each do that, and because we, and they were very kind about it, which I always appreciate kindness, so that's always remembered. But they were, hey, we didn't even know. We'll take care of it. So, yeah.
Councilmember Courtney?
This is, I think, a great project, and anything we can do to get information out about water conservation to folks, I'm all in favor of. Particularly thanks to you and to Stephanie for digging out the current Yopify thing and checking on the privacy and data privacy issues. So I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
I've got one more question. Is the Alpine Country Club metered?
I don't believe that the Alpine Country Club is on city PI.
I think they have their own wells.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But don't they have to meter by state regulation?
I believe they would, but I don't think we would have access to how much they use.
So we have our own pressurized system in Pheasant Hollow, and they've been going back and forth, and I think they all need meters. That's why I came forth and tried to get the surplus ones. But the state has kind of led them to believe that they can meter just the well. So I don't know, and I hope they kind of resolve that, because I think...
Yeah, there are stipulations on who needs to meter, and I know smaller communities are not under the same requirement. So Pheasant Hollow, even by the state bills that were passed, I don't know that they would be mandated to
They told us to meter the well.
Do they?
But, I just wondered, if Alpine Country Club uses a lot of water.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if they were kind of on some restrictions too. Because early in the season, Fox Hollow was irrigating a lot, and in March. And I went to Ernie John and I said, Ernie, why are we doing this? So I've noticed they're very careful now. So we're all in this together in a dry year. So I just was wondering how it all works.
In looking at our utility system, Councilmember Smith, Alpine Country Club doesn't pay us for PI. They pay us for culinary water, but not PI.
So they've got their own system. That's my understanding. I just wondered if they've got a meter. Yeah. But at the same time, I think they need to kind of work with all of us, because their water comes out of the well, which affects our culinary and our
aquifer,
PI, right?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that City Council approve the memorandum of agreement with Central Utah Water Conservancy District and authorize the city administrator to execute the agreement.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilwoman Rodella and a second by Councilmember Smith, and we're ready for a vote.
I'm going to have to do a voice vote.
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes.
That's a yes by Councilmember Campbell, and that passes 5-0. And we are on to our expedited items, starting with 5A, which is Chris again.
So this is our Strauss Park kind of improvements, where we'll be adding curb and gutter and sidewalk along 6,000 West and 10,400 North in the property that was deeded over to the city from the property owners there. I think we've talked about this with the council a few times. That's why it's expedited, but we've got some funding through this through Utah County. We've already approved the memorandum of understanding, and the hope is to help provide for some better, safer pedestrian access for people in that area. So,
Thank you.
thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and let's start with Councilwoman Rice. Do you have any questions?
And so this was in the budget, right?
Correct.
We're all in the budget. No, we're fine. Thank you.
Councilwoman Rodella? Councilmember Smith?
So I've looked at the plans a little bit here, and are we putting kind of, we're curving the corners on this, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And so does that add like a turn lane?
It will add a shoulder to it, which will provide for more room for turning.
Because that's been a kind of a bad intersection for a long time. So with the sidewalk and the curve in there, that should make it much safer for our young people.
Absolutely, yep.
Have we thought about anything about maybe putting a flashing crosswalk or anything there?
We haven't talked about it. It's always something that we could add.
We just ought to see, you know, I just think, because there are a lot of school kids.
We recently,
hopefully some of them walk to school in it still, I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of them do. It is on the safe routes map for the elementary school. We did add in the flashing LEDs, a while ago. But if we wanted to switch those out for some rapid flashing beacons, we could always look at it. We could get a pedestrian count and see how many kids we do have at that intersection.
We may want, if we do have flashing light there, we may want to educate people through the newsletter and things.
Yeah.
It was interesting, I was driving down Canal Boulevard where we have flashing lights. There were flashing lights going there. Someone was trying to cross and people were running through the flashing lights. So again, I think it's an enforcement issue as much as anything, because that's a real safety concern.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, would you mind having them put up the plans again? Go back.
Sure.
Do you mind?
While they're doing that, Councilmember Courtney, do you have any questions?
Just two comments. The first that, with regard to Scott's comment, it'll be great to at least get a crosswalk there. That I know we have been hesitant to put one in since we didn't really have any place for it a safe place for it to drop people off. So that'll be really nice to have at least a crosswalk, and we'll see. Certainly be open to something more. The other thing, Chris, just to bring up what we talked about just before the meeting, that bringing it up just because when we have talked about this in the past, we have specifically talked about parkway detail along there, and wanted to be clear that the design that we have here is just for a basic sidewalk, and that my understanding is that the expectation is that if that park is ever developed, then at that point we'd put in parkway detail. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Campbell?
Just one really strong comment that I am extremely impressed with 9 bids and the detail that you put into this to get the right contractor. That is a lot of work, and it's appreciated. And in the other project, you had some where one bidder for certain, you broke it up, so this bidder was cheaper on this and this one, and you went with both. And that kind of thing is really showing us that you're paying attention to really getting this cost down to the taxpayer. And I just really applaud that, and thank you for all that work. But I fully support this.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rice?
I do have one more question. So going back to and let me explain to you why I'm asking this question. Because I've noticed that when we have turn lanes, whether they're really designated turn lanes or not, sometimes those are bike lanes, and we're not really, I mean, maybe police chief can chime in on this, but my understanding was that we're not to turn right when there's a bike lane. That's a bike lane. So it can't really be, are you putting a bike lane there just out of curiosity, or is it just?
There's no bike lane on
Okay.
10400.
All right. I didn't think there was, but with the sidewalk, I wasn't sure if you were gonna.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe with regard to bike lanes, and it is single-use designated bike lanes that we can't. That oftentimes at the corner there will be an indication that it's both bike and auto use, and so in that case we can't have people drive in that space. Am I
That's
understanding
correct.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
And most of the time I see people making a right-hand lane turn on bike lanes, right? So that's what I see. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think we are ready for a motion.
I move that the City Council award the bid for the 10400 North Improvement Project to Black Forest Paving in the amount of $389,122.25.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Rice and a second by Councilmember Smith, and we're ready for a vote. Are you able to vote, Ron? Perfect. Nobody can beat Kim.
6.5 years of experience, Ron.
Sorry, I got off had to reboot.
All good. That passes 5-0, and we are on to expedited item 5B, and this is Jay. It's your moment.
Time to shine?
Yeah.
Talk trash. Sorry. All right. So for the last 5 years, we have had a contract, well, actually 6, we had a 5-year contract with Waste Management after going out to bid for a new waste hauler. That first initial run went 5 years. Last year was the end of that 5-year run, and so now we are into 1-year extensions. And so pretty much all the rest of the information was in your packet. We assume you read it. You're ready to vote on it. There are some other things that have come up in regard to garbage, not related to waste management. But I will give the time back to you, Mayor, for any discussion you want to have about this or anything else.
Perfect, thank you. And I think Councilmember Smith has some additional information, so I'll let him go first.
So it's interesting. I'm on the North Point Solid Waste Board, governing board. And let me tell you what's going down there. So the facility itself is kind of falling apart, and it needs to be rebuilt. And so there's been lots of debate about how to finance that and all the other things. And we really do have some of the lowest tipping fees that they charge the cities. But at the same time, they've been working on this project. They own land. I'm just going to tell you specifics because I think it's good to know this. They own land on the north side of the road that goes in there that the Vineyard Connector is going to go through. And so actually, Andy Spencer actually works with UDOT, and he was at our meeting on yesterday morning. And it was great to see Andy again, and he's just like he always is. He's just real pleasant. And so they showed the map. So UDOT wants to buy 18 acres of that property, and this is all in the public forum, so I'm not telling anything that was in executive session. And there's another 25 acres, and it sits in Linden City, and I've always been confused about where the border is between Pleasant Grove and Linden there, but Linden wants it to be developed into commercial area and stuff. So there's a fair amount of money that can be obtained for the new project from selling that land. So one of the problems, and I've complained about this before, is, we have Zions, we have these different groups come and make suggestions and look at things, and it's very valid information. I'm not opposed to that. But oftentimes they just come in and make kind of proposals that are really hard. And we had a proposal there on that board a couple months ago, and Zions came in and says, you need to raise your tipping fees by $4 right now. Well, some of them bought into that when we've not even got ready for the project and they haven't sold the land. And I really pushed back because that increases our costs by at least $45,000 more, and Waste Management just increased theirs another 4.8%, so that's $55,000. So our garbage costs went up $100,000 in 1 year. And I do know that New Era, which is this consortium of all the waste management places along that, they're going to raise their fee again next year. So I pushed back and said, look, we're in the middle of the budgeting process, and they're not even going to pass this till the 22nd of June after we pass our full budget. And I kind of argued for incremental things. Now, I'm not opposed to the project, although they're talking about up to a $40 million project. You could build a small temple for that. And so I'm not sure why it's so expensive, but I know what happens is your firms and stuff, when they start coming in and it's public money or special service money, everything gets more expensive, because we had the design people come in and just double their costs the minute they heard about this. So we've got lots of things to work through. So when we had the vote, I voted against it, and so did Vineyard. However, when the letter went out today, and I don't know if this is in public knowledge, but Pleasant Grove just pushed against it. Okay, they voted, their representative voted on it, for it, but when they got back to the city council and that, they said, we don't think so. And so there's some pushback coming. So I'm hopeful that we can look at other alternatives. Yes, we're going to eventually have to, but it's a $5 increase in tipping fees. And we were planning on a $1 increase. But that increases our costs quite dramatically right when we're trying to do budget. So that's kind of where things are, but I was kind of glad. Vineyard texted me and said they were very happy that I spoke out. I tried to be pleasant. But I kept saying, can't we do this in increments? It's hard on cities. But now that Pleasant Grove's kind of joined in, I think things will change. So the mayor actually has been, one of the most interesting things is that a citizen from Alpine's on the governing board, but Alpine's not part of this special district. He's a county at-large delegate. And of course, he was fine with the fee increase because Alpine's not going to have to pay it. But Alpine has their own landfill that they use, which is in Fairfield. And the mayor looked at it, and we kind of need to talk about that because Alpine's cheaper than we are. And so maybe, since they haul all their garbage through Timpanogos Highway and stuff and through us, we may want to look at alternatives. So I like working on the board down there, but I think they need to be reasonable on cost increases. And so that's kind of what I know. And it was an interesting meeting yesterday. It was a 2-hour meeting, so and I hope that helps the city. But I was glad to see Pleasant Grove at 5 o'clock came back and said, we don't want to do that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Courtney.
I don't have anything about this. I've been pleased with Waste Management. They seem to do a good job, and they're really visible in the community. So,
Mr. Campbell.
I actually have some questions for Scott. Scott, are you thinking that do we need to support this, or are you thinking we can push back and look at other alternatives and do this later?
Well, solid waste service agreement's different because they're their carrier.
Okay.
I'm talking about North Point Solid Waste District, and that's where the transfer station where they take the garbage to, and then they have another company that hauls it over to Bayview on the west side of the lake.
Yes.
So the problem is there's fees for Bayview, there's fees for the transfer station, and just as I'm seeing here, unless we get this Iran conflict and the gas prices down, those companies are going to come right in and want this.
Yep.
And my concern with Waste Management, people have been very happy with them. I think they do a great job, but every year they increase their fees more than their rate of inflation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up 4.8%, and until recently that rate was down below 3% inflation. So I'm not opposed to this, but I think we need to work with the transfer station and kind of come up with a slower increase or whatever. I don't think they need to build a temple down there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I'm envisioning Waste Management temple.
Yeah.
Everything Scott just said, I support that, and meaning I therefore support this.
Ms. Rice?
So this was not really planned for, right, Jay? This is not something that, and just, so we have to allocate more money for this?
Yes, usually every year we will get maybe a % increase. Last year it was like 1.5%.
But this is more.
But this year, this is a $5 per ton tipping fee.
So how much is that?
So,
well, probably, that's not a lot to each of the taxpayers, right? To each of our constituents.
we still need to, we have a model that we use to calculate our garbage rates. We still need, Aaron and I need to sit down and make some finalizations there, but it will be a small increase.
Small increase.
So their calculations, if I can answer that.
Excuse me, I was talking. I really appreciate Waste Management because they have gone overboard down our street. They've waited for me, for my neighbor, a couple of times. So I just was curious if we're kind of talking pennies, correct?
It'll be smaller than last year's increase, not more than $1.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Kim?
I just wanted to hear what Scott said because you knew that amount, right, that Liz was asking about?
Right. So I've got it here in the packet here. So we're talking about two things. We're talking about the transfer station that I'm on the board. And so there's tipping fees there, and they want to increase their tipping fees per ton up to $42.50 from $37.50. And they calculated out approximately for Highland about an increase of $46,000.
Okay.
So they calculated out per resident, and they're going to have to look at this more carefully because he's using data that's probably old. But he estimated it to be about 84 cents to $1 per month. So people's fees would go up at least $12 But I think we won't know until we do all the calculations, but that's what they estimated. But the thing is Waste Management with their 4.8% increase, which is about 55,000 when I looked at it. And then if we have North Point's increase, that's another 45 to 50,000. So we're talking about an increase in garbage costs of 100,000.
Okay,
so we're
that's
have
where
to
you got the
increase.
100,000.
Yeah. So in the end, we're going to have to raise fees. Sorry.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, I think then we are ready for a motion.
I'll make that motion, if you don't mind. I move that the City Council renew the solid waste service agreement with Waste Management for a period of 1 year to begin services on July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2027.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Councilwoman Rice and a second by Councilmember Courtney. And we're ready for a vote. And that passes 5-0, and we are on to item 5C, and that is Rob.
Thank you, Mayor, and if the chief has any comment, you're welcome to chime in as well. But this relates to the WUI, the Wild Land Urban Interface. We talked about this. This is on expedited because we've discussed this several times. This isn't the adoption of any of the WUI codes. This is, as we talked last time, we have to adopt the WUI code in order to remain eligible for state coverage of all costs related to forest fires on state and federal land, and in some other cases. So we did adopt the version of the WUI that was in place at the time. We're still talking. We'll bring back in a future item the new code and kind of talk through all the ramifications of that. This is just the agreement between us and the state that says if there is a fire on state or federal land or in certain other kind of catastrophic level wildfire, the state will cover the vast majority of all expenses, which are a lot in the case of a wildfire. So this just says we agree that we will essentially work with the state. There's a participation component we're supposed to do, and the state does that either in money or in kind, in terms of essentially they want us to help manage the land so it doesn't become a fire risk. So a lot of our participation will be ensuring our firefighters are trained, have the proper equipment, and do mitigation work around the city. There might be some financial components to that, but we'll be receiving those and then getting that from the state. So we believe this is a very good thing because the city could not absorb the cost of a wildfire on the mountain. Any comments from the chief?
No, this also, the cooperative agreement is essentially the way that we deploy out of the state. Everything goes through the state of Utah. So when we get deployed, we are a cooperator of the state of Utah. We can't just go to Colorado by ourselves. It would be awesome if we could, but we can't. It's all facilitated through the state. So this is also part of that component, this MOU with the state as a cooperator.
Okay. Ms. Rice, do you have any questions?
No, I do have a comment, though. I'm amazed. I talk to 20 to 50 people a day about various things, and I'm amazed at how many of them do not understand we're in a wildfire area. And lots of education that is done there. And I got, I think the chief knows this, but about 3 months ago, I got something from my homeowner's insurance that asked me to opt out of my wildfire insurance. And I did call my insurance agent, and he goes, "Oh, don't sign that. You are." And then I went to a couple of meetings with the fire district and whatnot, and really learned a lot. But I'm just hoping that people that are watching really realize that we really are in a wildfire area and that this is a necessary thing. So thank you.
Kim?
I do have a question. It says that the city will bear some fiscal impact through its assessment to Lone Peak. Do you know what type of fiscal impact we're thinking about here?
A physical impact or a fiscal?
Oh, fiscal. Fiscal. Wait.
And I can go into both. The The fiscal impact is about $35,000. The physical impact is manual labor, if you will. So we've already met our in-kind for this year.
Okay.
We get in-kind money with the new engine that we just purchased as a district. We'll actually get in-kind money for the next 5 years. We get money or in-kind with water system maintenance. Any of the tools and radios and stuff, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but we also get grant money and we purchase things, and they count that as us purchasing things for, I mean, they give us money and then they count it as our money, which is really nice of them.
So we don't need to be taking into account when we're doing our budget that an extra $35,000 increase into our budget?
No.
Okay.
No, we do all of that work both fiscally and physically.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Dr. Smith?
So I'm anxious to see the maps, because the map had all the homes that live along the American Fork River and Dry Creek and everything in this wildfire area. But you know, when you think about it, and of course we're in with Lone Peak and Alpine, but on the north side of the city we've got Alpine kind of buffering a little bit between the mountains, and Cedar Hills on the other side. I mean, certainly where the mayor lives in Viewpoint's right on the mountain where you could see that federal land. But so I'd be real curious to see what we consider to be federal and state land that goes into the interior of the city. Is it the conservation areas? Is that considered state land?
There's a few areas along the eastern side of Highland that are state-owned, federally owned or managed. And then you have just the mountain itself, which is state or BLM land. So any efforts we do to try to combat that, the state would help cover, unless I'm misstating that, Chief?
No, so if we remember a couple of years ago, we had the Cedar Hills fire in the summer, which was caused by a firework on private property in Cedar Hills proper in a backyard. So that fire ends up going from private property in the city to state land and then ultimately into forest or wilderness. The state essentially the state flipped the bill for that. So if we had a fire that started in Dry Creek or Bull River or wherever, and it's basically what we call it is any kind of wildland fire that gets delegated, which is probably going to be either a fire that threatens structures or essentially is going to be a prolonged event and potentially have like air resources or any bigger fire than we can put out in 20 minutes, honestly, is probably going to get delegated. And the state is, even if that fire is in the middle of Highland, stays in the middle of Highland, and never goes onto state or forest property, the state is still going to act as our insurance carrier, if you will, and take care of that bill. Last year we had a fire over in the Dry Creek corridor in Lehigh. They ended up bringing in helicopters because it was a little bit hard to get in there, and the state picked up the bill on that. The whole thing was in Lehigh proper.
So what you're saying is, even though it's not state and federal land, they continue to help out with these agreements?
Yes, and I mean, our side, we are cooperating with the state. The other side of that is, if we get a fire that's up on the hill, we are going to react to that, and we are going to throw everything we can at it to try to stop that fire, as well as try to mitigate and purchase the proper equipment and things like that to help the state.
Okay, that's helpful.
Councilmember Courtney?
I don't have anything about this one. Looks like a good agreement to me.
Councilmember Campbell?
Yeah, I just appreciate the state pulling back a little bit. The legislature did when the whole WUI thing blew up, and we look like we're going to be costing our residents an astronomical amount of money. So that's been pulled back and back to the drawing board. We've yet to see what's going to come out of it, but at this point, we certainly support this. It's a no-brainer. We pay a little bit, and we get a great benefit and protection. It's the FDIC of fires.
Okay, and with that, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll make that. I move that the Highland City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute the cooperative agreement with the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands.
I'll second.
That is a motion by Councilmember Smith and a second by Councilwoman Rodella, and we're ready for a vote. Okay, thank you. On to communication items. Chief, do you want to take this first, or Doug?
Why don't we let Council Member Courtney lead off, and I will fall in where it's necessary.
Right, this is really just intended to run through the changes. I'd like to thank Aaron, and I don't know who else put the slides together. I'm not going to read through the entire slide. We've got 3 classes of e-bikes and then e-motorcycles. We will, I think, before too long, maybe as part of this item, be talking about distinctions between Class 1 and Class 2 that we make, and there's been some question whether or not we want to continue those. The distinction, as I understand it, is a Class 2, you can use the motor to drive the bicycle without pedaling it, whereas it's just pedal assist in Class 1. Get the next. This is the same infographic that was there for the open house. Changes that at this point are now effective. Helmet required. Understand what we just talked about, what we just had up here with the different classes. Some cases where a license may be restricted or required. Age restrictions under 8, not driving them on public roads, and under 16 can't operate the higher power e-bikes, the Class 3 and above. Clarified that DUI laws apply, and some additional changes that are heading our way in 2027 with regard to adult supervision and safety certification.
Wait, Doug, can I ask a question? Yep. Can you go back to that? So this is state code saying, starting in 2027, riders ages 8 to 15 have to have an adult with them if they're on an e-bike or an e-scooter?
I don't believe that it's that they have to have somebody with them.
So they will have to be under direct supervision between 8 and 15 unless they complete this safety certification. That's my understanding of how this is written.
So how do you know if they completed the safety certification? Are you going to have, or do they have to carry something on them?
That's why I think they're waiting to figure out the best way to do that, and they punted until next year's general session to be able to figure out the best alternatives to be able to, if it's a license per se, like you carry around a driver's license, if it's some type of permitting that's done by the state or by the local communities, that was part of the discussion this year.
Okay.
I thought they were waiting to work out the exact design of the facial tattoo that comes with the safety certification.
You could embed something in their skin underneath. Okay.
The helmet would work. Attach something to the helmet so the cops aren't.
I'm sorry, say that again about the helmet.
Sorry, you could attach some kind of license. I mean, number. I don't know what they're going to come up with to the helmet, so the police aren't.
Helmets are interchangeable. However, I could wear your helmet, and you could wear mine.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. So. Okay.
The first bullet point here is just that state law includes some basic rules and allows cities to make some determinations about what's allowed on their streets and trails and sidewalk. Yes. These next points, Aaron, Rob, is, with regard to the clarification that we need on things, is that something that we're looking for specific clarification this evening, or is that just we will be coming for more discussion about this?
I'd say it's future discussion unless council's ready tonight. I feel like there's a lot of information on this that we're all still learning, frankly. So, you know, unless council feels strongly one way or the other about the different classes, I'd say it's kind of a future conversation.
Perfect. My interest in having this on the agenda was really just, I like having more places rather than fewer. We're highlighting the recent changes to residents, so perfect.
Okay, Councilmember Campbell, do you have anything to add?
I am following closely in Orange County the mother that is being charged with involuntary manslaughter because her son, and I'm thinking about the Serrans and the parents not caring whether their kids are abusing the law, because I don't really know what impact these changes in the law is really going to have. Are we going to see less Serran abuse, or are we going to see about the same? So this case really sets the stage for us to be able to communicate to the residents, your parents, you're responsible, so take that responsibility seriously, because the consequences could be severe. Involuntary manslaughter is not a minor charge, and it's all because her 14-year-old child hit a 91-year-old veteran and killed him. And the mother had been warned prior that the son was speeding, and there were some warnings. I don't know if that would still apply if those warnings weren't in place ahead of time, but it is a case that I think these new laws, I really hope we can figure out a way how to communicate to the parents how important it is that they be followed. I think the legislature's done a good job in terms of what they're proposing or they're laid out there for us. But I do hope that parents are paying attention to this.
Ms. Rice?
I appreciate those comments, Ron. I'm in total agreement. But I asked Doug this earlier today. Because I've seen some people pretty much get hit on the trails with the scooters, and the scooters aren't classified as e-bikes, correct? But they have a throttle, so they're moving fairly fast.
Correct. They have a different classification as a motor-assisted scooter. They don't fall under this.
They don't at all. But do we have anything like that? Do we need something like that?
There is a motor-assisted scooter law that is out there. It's been a long time since I've looked at it, but there is something that's there about motor-assisted scooters and where they should be ridden or where they shouldn't, but that's not something I've looked at recently.
Okay. Thank you.
Kim?
No, this is just great information, and I've been following it. My kids have e-bikes, e-scooters, and I appreciate what regulations are happening and how the city is and the state are coming together and collaborating on that. So really great stuff. Thanks, Doug.
Dr. Smith?
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments and your comments, Ron and Kim, because you have a young family, and I'm sure they like these e-bikes. The only problem I've ever run into people with the e-bikes is when they're on sidewalks, and I was walking to, it'll soon be a couple years ago when I decided to walk up on the Highland Fling, almost missed the parade. But, there were a couple kids on e-bikes that just whipped through on the sidewalk, and there were a lot of people on it. So I think it'll be just good to kind of somehow or the other kind of come to a consensus with what's really safe on sidewalks. But I appreciate all your work on this, Doug.
It really wasn't much work on my part. It really was staff that put the slides together, so thank you.
Take the compliment.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, staff. And on to item 6B, and this is Councilwoman Rodella talking about the fling.
Okay, just a couple things that, let's see here. Sorry, my kid just got a hit. Okay, so a couple things. Fireman spray. I know we're trying to be sensitive to water concerns this year, so this is one of the questions. Does the council want to do the fireman spray? It does come from a different water source. So just the optics of it. The fire department has denied other requests for sprays in other organizations. What are our thoughts? Fireman spray, yes or no?
Let's start with you. Yes or no?
I mean, I love all things fun, and I don't want to limit something for Highland Fling. I mean, it doesn't come from the source that we are conserving, but at the same time, the optics don't look good, so I'm a 50-50.
Dr. Smith?
I like the fireman spray, as long as they don't spray me.
Sure. It's a fair ask.
The fact that we've denied requests for sprays from other organizations is kind of the key tipping point for me. So I would go for no.
Yeah, I'm with Doug. I am really 50-50. I could argue it convincingly both ways because it's a different source. It's groundwater. We don't have a groundwater problem. We have a surface water problem. We may have a groundwater problem if we don't solve the surface water problem over the next few years. But immediately, we don't have a groundwater problem. However, 95% of the residents don't understand that difference. And we barely understand it. So for that and the optics of it, for the significance of the drought situation that we're in and what we want to communicate, and I hate it. I really hate not having that fun event at the Fling, but I just don't feel like I can support it at this point.
Councilmember Rice?
Well, I'm for all things fun as well, but as much criticism as what I've heard that, oh, well, this is running over here, and just like at Larson Park, Aaron, when I got the 2 calls and I forwarded those to you, and I just, it's fun, but I'm going to say no this year.
Okay, it looks like we have 3 no's, 1 yes, and a 50-50.
Okay. Do a no-go on fireman spray.
Vendor fees.
Maybe we could do foam instead. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that.
Brooke, will you please
Possibility
come up
of
to
foam
the-
is what she said.
I'm just trying to think what else could be fun yeah. Okay. Vendor fees. So we charge vendor fees, $138 for non-food vendors, $193 for food vendors, $28 for electrical fee. This is what our neighboring cities do. It brings in roughly $5,600 in vendor fees annually. I know this is one of the areas that the Highland Fling has really struggled with in order to get vendors into our area. We're thinking of possibly waiving or reducing that fee in order to start building that up. What are your guys' thoughts on that? If so, then we'd have to go in and do a change in our fees for that.
Dr. Smith, what are your thoughts?
Can I think about it in a minute?
Sure.
And maybe
Yeah.
just go down there.
The biggest concern that I think I'd have about waiving vendor fees is what that does to us next year and the year after and the year after. That I think that it's difficult to have zero cost for vendors one year and then come back to them and tell them that it's going to be $200 more than they paid last year. And I wonder if we waive the fees this year, that we're essentially deciding that either we're going to do away with vendor fees going forward, or that we're going to have a steep drop-off on vendors whenever we pull them back in. So that's just a little bit of a concern that I have there. I'm not opposed to waiving vendor fees. I think we didn't do particularly well by a lot of our vendors and our sponsors last year, and am very open to doing things to improve that for them.
Well, when you do look at neighboring cities, they're definitely get more bang for their buck because it's higher attendance, better vendors there, higher crowds. And so I think it makes sense to charge that amount, especially Alpine City where you have a wait list in order to get in. I mean, for us, it's just one area in which a fling struggles. And so it doesn't make sense for us to be comparable to other cities when they aren't going to be as profitable.
What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, what percentage of the budget are the vendor fees? Do we know that
It's
amount?
$5,600.
It's how much?
They bring in $5,600.
$5,600, and we gave an extra $20,000 to the fling, and it could be considered, well, that could be the trade-off. We're giving more money so that we can build the fling. That's the objective, right? So it really boils down, do we believe this will bring in more by us not getting the 5,600, but we get twice as many vendors as we would if we charged? I'm kind of with Scott. I need a little bit more time to think about it. I should have been thinking about it because I knew it was on the agenda, but I haven't. At this point, I'm kind of leaning toward, if we think we can get more vendors, genuinely get more vendors, that would be the trade-off that would be to us worth the $5,600, I could support that. But that's an if, and I don't know the answer to that if at this point.
Liz, what do you think?
Is that big enough?
Yep.
So we had you said, Kim, $5,600 what we made, and then Ron said we put another 20 grand in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm wondering, this is just an idea, throwing it out there, but I'm wondering if we couldn't say we'd like a 2-year commitment from you and the first year's free, or the first year's half price, or the first year, you know, please come, but the second year we'd really like that second year commitment from you to come back. It's just an idea. It's not, you know, I'm not going to, you know, fall on that sword or anything, but I just, to attract them, and maybe they would really do well their first year, so they'd want to come back that second year, something to that effect. I don't think we're unreasonable in what we charge. I hate to see $5,600 go away, but, or maybe if they're a new business in Highland, they could come in free their first year. And there's maybe a million things that they could do with a 2-year commitment, in my opinion. That's just an idea, but I want the fling to be really successful, but I'd also like to see more food vendors, more, you know, food trucks or whatever you want in there. But I think I had a couple of other ideas, but that's, you know, especially if Alpine has you said Alpine has a waiting list?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's
And we
very
don't.
difficult to get in there to be a vendor. My neighbor across the street, she's a vendor and she goes to Midway, but she said it's the hardest thing to get into Alpine.
All right, so she must do really well in Alpine when they go to there.
Yeah,
Is it
it's very
what-
profitable when they go there.
They go. Well, I think we can come up with some ideas to attract them, especially, you know, as I sit on the board for the chamber, of how we can attract, you know, more business to Highland. But that, I just think we need to be a little more creative with, hey, we want a 2-year commitment, first year's free. Something like that. Thanks, that's all.
Yep. Hey, Brooke, do you have anything you would like to add? If you do, you have to come up front.
Full name.
Sorry to put you on the spot. Is your
Brooke, can you
microphone
step
on?
closer to the microphone and make sure the green light is on? Thank you.
Okay, Brooke Boyd. I don't have a lot to add to that. I do agree with growing the event. And I think that sometimes you do have to cut some costs in order to make something better and gain more costs later on, especially from a hospitality standpoint and the tourism standpoint, is if people are seeing that it's bigger this year, they're going to bring their friends next year. And even if that means that next year we may charge they might have seen that it was such a great event, and they're thinking of the occupancy that they're going to gain from that, rather than this year, you know, if we don't have as much occupancy, they're not going to want to come back next year, but it's kind of this growing thing. So yeah, shortly, cutting costs now to gain more later.
What did you say Alpine charges again? I'm sorry to interrupt. How much do they charge for their vendors again?
I don't have Alpine in front of me,
Okay.
but most
Is it
cities are
more?
between
Is it-
150 and 200.
So it's more or less than ours?
There's slightly
Less.
more,
More.
but I don't have the exact number.
Thank you, Brooke. You're doing a great job. We appreciate it. Dr. Smith.
So I've been sitting here thinking, I guess what I'd recommend is maybe a consensus of some of the things I'm hearing. What we want is the fling to be successful. We want to draw people in. And my feeling, and especially because we're going to be doing some education at the city center booth this year on various things. My feeling is I think there should be some fee for the vendor, but I would probably say it's $25 or $50. Yeah. And so that we attract people and then advertise that, because I'm sure some of the vendors last year that probably spent close to $200 to be there maybe didn't make $200 back. So that's kind of what I think. I'd say you need a fee, but maybe $25, $50, kind of in that range. You still get a lot of your money, but you may have, it's kind of, a lot of times when you lower costs, you have more participation, and so you may get back all that $5,600 and have a much more successful fling.
Could we do like $25 if you're a Highland City business, $50 if you're a non-Highland City business?
I could agree to that.
I like that as well.
Okay. So it looks like we have a couple of ideas. We've got the charging a little bit less idea. We have an idea of maybe a 2-year commitment. So it looks like Kim and Scott, you're in favor of the $25 and the $50?
The 25, or yeah, 25 and 50. 25 for residents or businesses in Highland, 50 for non-Highland residents.
Okay. Doug?
I'd be okay with that. We'd need to also decide what we're doing for electrical hookups. But yes, yeah, that's another fee that we have.
We have a resident that may have an idea. Is that all right, Mayor?
Sure. Come on up.
Wayne Stewart. Okay, so I'm excited about this one in a positive way. My father did the first home and garden show ever. He went to a trade show for he went to a commercial trade show for vendors and manufacturers and stuff. And he thought the public needs to see this. It's a very fun thing. And he did the very first one in the Salt Palace. He charged $100 in 1976 for people to attend, right? Which doesn't apply here. But he charged $500 in 1976 money for the vendors. But the thing that really kicked it off for him and got people in was he had KSL, KUTV, and KTVX on site doing remotes for the weather, the news, from his trade show. And the other thing that he did was he took all of that money that they collected and he dropped it on advertising. He spent more money than had ever been spent in TV history for 5 days of a trade show. Every single vendor there tripled their money, every single one. And some of the products that were launched at the Home and Garden Show, this first one, was the Vitamix, stick blenders. I mean, there are dozens of those types of things that were launched at his trade show. He ended up losing it because KSL came in the next year and they signed up all of the vendors for 2 years. This is what reminded me of it, right? But they pretended to be him. So how did you do at the trade show? Oh, we doubled our money. This is freaking awesome, you know?
Wow.
And then they signed him up for 2 years, cut a deal with the Salt Palace, and then cut him completely out. So then he went to the malls, and he did a trade show down the University Mall hallway when it was just plants, right? And the people that were there were making more money in their booths than they were at the brick and mortar store. So they said, can we just stay here? And then that became the kiosks going down the mall nationwide. So there's a couple of things to learn there. One of them is it doesn't matter what it costs the vendor, it's what they make, right? $128, $200 to be in a booth someplace where you've got traffic. And it's the age-old problem of DJs, right? How do you start a dance and get everybody to attend, right, when nobody attends? Then nobody's making any money. I'm thinking, just as an idea and a suggestion, if you reach out to the local podcasters, especially in Highland, you reach out to the 3 channels and you invite them to run a remote from the Highland Fling. Because I'll tell you, the reason that people don't come to the Highland Fling is because we are up to our eyeballs busy, right? I literally had to take 4 hours off of work to get here because my day starts at 7 a.m. and ends at 11 p.m. So when I take off work to come here, it's like kind of a sacrifice to get here and do something constructive. So whenever I always see the Highland Fling after it's happened, and I'm like, dang, I actually like that. I missed it this year. So if we don't worry about, because here's the other problem too. When you lower the cost of entry, you lower the quality of the entrance, right? So don't be afraid to look the other way. We want high quality vendors in the Highland Fling, and we want people to come. Well, the people will come if they know what's happening, one, and the vendors will actually pay more if they know that part of the money that they're spending to come and exhibit here is going to be used for advertising to actually promote them all, if that makes sense. I hope that helps.
It does. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Very, very good.
Thank you. Yeah. So it looks like we have some support for the $25 and the $50 and also possibly some support for exploring some more creative options like Councilwoman Rice and the resident suggested. Is that helpful enough direction?
Respectfully, the sooner we know this, the better, just because vendors need to sign up now. Is that a fair statement, Brooke?
So I think you had at least 3 who supported the $25 and the $50, because Councilwoman Rodella, Dr. Smith.
And I think Ron and maybe Doug.
Well, and I like charging less for the Highland vendors. They need that break, but the idea, I do agree with Wayne Stewart that, the higher the amount, well, that's not coming out right, but if you charge a little bit more, you're going to get better vendors too. It's not, you're going to get a lower vendor. So anyway, I really like the 2-year commitment to, or maybe charge a very minimal fee the first year and second year full commitment, but.
I think it's a great idea and something we should possibly look into for next year, if we're not able to do it this year. Yeah. Are you raising your hand?
Yes. Anyway, sorry. Before Mr. Stewart's comments, Councilman Courtney had asked about what do we do about the electricity fee. We could look at that either 2 ways. We're charging $25 for residents and $50 for non-residents. Would that doubling of the fee be the electrical fee, or would non-residents be paying $75 total?
Kim?
For electricity, does that actually cost us money?
Right now, we charge I think it's $28 now because we raised the fee earlier this year. But
so what does that $28 fee cover? Is it somebody coming? Is it the electricity? Like, are we actually? Is that costing us money?
It's them tying into our electricity to run their booth.
But does it actually cost us $28 to provide that electricity? Like, where did that number come from?
The fee schedule.
Perfect. It used to be 25 and we raised it 10%. But for some vendors, we have to rent. Depending on how many we get, we either run it to our own power box or we rent generators, or not generators, spider boxes is what they're called. And so, yes, it does cost us something. Do I know that it's exactly $28? No. Per person, it all depends.
It seems like we probably do want to charge for electrical. We could cut that down from 28 if we wanted to, but because we just don't have the capacity to provide electrical outlets to every single.
And that is an actual cost.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have strong feelings on that one?
Madam Mayor, one last clarification. The 2550, are we talking about non-food and food vendors, or are we talking about just non-food vendors? One thing to think about, food vendors tend to make money. When you go to an event, they tend to make money. They also tend to have the most impact on an event in terms of the amount of garbage that they produce and things like that. That being said, food vendors bring people to events because they love food trucks, right?
Okay, so that was my question when you're talking about food vendors. Was it those little booths that sell sourdough or cinnamon rolls, or is it the actual food trucks?
Jay or Brooke, do we have a distinction in our fee schedule for what type of food vendor, or is it just food versus non-food?
It just lists non-food vendors versus food vendors.
Can we just distinguish it as a food truck? Because they're, you got those little booths kids selling cinnamon rolls and sourdough, and it's totally different from actual food trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, we can amend the fee schedule to speak specifically to food trucks who have a larger impact on, we have public works staff who are there just to change out garbage and things like that. Like they do have a large impact versus the guy selling honey sticks or whatever,
That being said, I'm remembering one of our popular vendors last year did Navajo tacos, and she's out of a booth. She's not in a food truck, right? But she's certainly generating a lot of garbage because it is a full meal as well.
I guess last year we had not that many food options, and I'm just wondering, is it because of the fling itself, or is it because the event coordinator did not go out and solicit food trucks to come to the event? Because we did lack. So if food trucks are happy to come, and this is something that actually the fee doesn't dissuade them from coming, then I would treat it differently.
And that's a hard question to answer, I feel like, because of last year. I'd say I don't know, I would say in prior years we had more, thinking 2020, good heavens, 5 in previous, but I don't know. Be happy to know your thoughts on that, but I felt like we had more in previous years. So I wondered if it was a management problem.
I think it was a management problem last year.
So you're saying waive it for food vendors, but charge them the electrical hookup, Kim, or what are you saying?
No, I'm saying for food vendors, we could keep the fee. Yeah.
Okay, so waive the vendor fees for everyone except for food.
Let's see here. So we can go with option vendor fees, $25, residents $50, non-residents fee stays the same, which is, what do we charge? Food trucks, $193.
Okay.
Food vendors, or $150. What do you guys think? Scott?
Councilmember Smith, what do you think?
Well, again, it goes back to Mr. Stewart's comments. It goes back to attendance. So you had some food vendors here for the city open house. I would be surprised if many of them made much money because not a lot of people came. And and we've had last year at the Fling, not a lot of people came. And, and if we're going to be restricting water, some of the things that bring people in with their kids are water features. So, I think we're going to have to balance out. I kind of think we just need to have a lot of participation. And to me, it just seems to make sense. One, Mr. Stewart's ideas about advertising better, which I'm hoping we're doing. But I still would keep the fees low and get more participation. Even if it's not, I don't know. I think I kind of look at the Fling sometimes as a little bit of like an open air market combined with, to some degrees, like a little bit of a circus, And so I think people just need to come and have a good time, and I don't think the goal is to make a lot of money off the vendors right now. But if it's highly successful, you can increase your fees a little bit every year, and make sure, and you can look at your costs. Electricity is one cost. It's too bad we can't get Rocky Mountain Power to give us the $10,000 that they cost us on the fire department driveway because they didn't get the box in there, but yeah.
So maybe just keep it 25.50, and those food trucks are going to, use electricity anyway, so they're paying an extra $28 or whatever, and just start out like that.
I agree with that.
Okay. Are you good with that, Doug?
As long as we've got enough plans in the budget for advertising, and we're not thinking that we really need an extra, if we had an extra grand in vendor fees, then we could do meaningfully more advertising. That might be an argument. I'm not convinced in our case that that's probably the situation. So, yeah, I would be okay with that.
Okay. Ron?
I'm happy as long as I know that Brooke has Wayne Stewart's contact information.
Perfect. And Liz?
Please, if you could help us on that fling committee. I'm speaking for Kim here.
Perfect.
But I think it would be a tremendous help to have your voice on that committee. So there's the contact person, and there's your resource. So other than that, I'm happy with what's been discussed here.
We already had a conversation. So Liz, what do you think?
So tell me what's magical about 193 for food demo. That's kind of a weird number. Where did we?
I think it just we started out as one number and then we adjust it for inflation, so it ends up being a weird number.
Okay. No, I don't. I think Wayne Stewart has some amazing ideas in many fields, so I would like to see us make some money on that, but if that means lowering it and then raising it as they come, that's fine. I think that's fine.
Okay, do you have your direction? You have another question?
I just,
Perfect.
So we've talked about last year and what happened last year where we didn't have a lot of foot traffic and so on. If you recall, we did have a conversation last year about what we wanted, what council envisioned the scope and the draw of the fling to be. Was it going to be something large where we had like regional businesses that had big names and advertisements and bring a lot of people here and make it a huge event? Or did we want it to be something more intimate and local? And at the end of the day, the council did decide on something that was smaller and more Highland resident oriented. So that is at odds with making this a large thing where vendors have 1 million people and they're tripling their reach, and we're advertising on KSL and so on. So,
do you think we can get 1 million people to come to the fling?
Oh, easily.
I think. Do you have the answers you need?
I think so. We want to make sure we are here for the residents of Highland first, but we do want to make it an enjoyable experience for everybody, which includes bringing in quality vendors, and so that's what we will pursue. And so we will.
It might be fun next year to have like a different price for like kids, right? If you're like 12 and you want to do a little booth or something. Yep, that might be fun. Okay.
There's 4 million people go up the canyon every year. We can do detour signs from SR 92 down to the fling, back up.
We could detour them around.
There you go. That problem solved.
Kim, as the fling committee member to the council, do you feel like you have enough information here to move forward?
Yes, I do.
A couple last things I want to say, and I'll be quick, Mayor, I'm sorry. Just know that Brooke still has discretion over whether to accept or not accept a vendor. Like, we don't want 10 Sensi booths or 10 Navajo taco booths or something like that. So she still has that discretion, know that. And number two, we are absolutely advertising better this year, including a magazine. So Brooke has it all in the works.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
So Brooke, have you seen the Cedar Hills advertisement magazine that just came out?
I can bring you my copy.
Yeah, Cedar Hills
I
has
got
a
you.
nice one. Yeah.
Okay, and then I think Doug had one more comment. Mhm.
Just with regard to a special fee for kids' booths, I think that if I understood what you were saying earlier, that we're anticipating a kind of a kids market that will be entirely youth run booths.
Perfect. Okay. I think we are ready to move on to pressurized irrigation water and property watering update.
So before, Mayor, can I just ask something?
Yes.
Before we get talking about water, can we have a restroom break?
Sure.
Okay.
Is this our work session?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Nope, we are on item 6C and we're taking a
No.
Okay. We've been kind of showing the snowpack that we have in the state every council meeting. It's just interesting to see where we're at compared with the last council meeting on May 4th. A couple of areas have actually gone up with some of the precipitation that we've gotten. So it's kind of good to see. It looks like in the higher UN as they went from a 16% to 52%. So that is nice to see. But if you look at the Provo Utah Lake region, we've gone from 16% down to 8%. And I don't know what's going on with lower severe. Somebody must have dropped a bucket of water and went from 0 to 200 in 2 weeks. Just quickly overview, parks, all of our irrigation is being turned on at parks. We're going through the process of cleaning and replacing filters as needed. Still a process that we're working through, but it seems to be a little bit smoother process than what we had last year. Obviously, there's areas around the city, that, parks, open spaces that are still yellow, and we'll start to apply irrigation. I didn't include this as part of the presentation, but if you go to the Utah Weekly Watering Guide, it does now show watering weekly once a week for the entire state of Utah, except for southern Utah, which shows twice a week. As far as our PI system, we are getting some water from Provo River at the booster station. We asked for 8 CFS last week, and we've taken that down to 4. Talking with Tayson earlier today, he thought we probably, if we wanted to, could probably reduce that even more, but we've been trying to work through some of the kinks with the new booster station, so he's kind of kept it up, you know, to at least a little bit so we could work through some of those. And right now the ponds are looking pretty good. I don't know what AE is, but the levels are currently sufficient for what we're seeing. We've had some rain. We've had a little bit of rain. Looking at the forecast, we show a little bit of rain possibly Thursday this week, and then again a little bit next week. So, and the temperatures have been a little bit cooler. You know, it shows it looking at, again, goes up to maybe 80, but then back down to highs in the 60s. So anything like that is really going to help us with our system. Still have some concerns with really what our storage is in Jordanelle and the Provo River, though. They're telling us that our allocation for 2026 could be reduced to 50%. So if we look at kind of where some of our sources are now, for us to keep up with some of the demands that we have on our system now, we'll just really be having to eat into some of the holdover that we have currently, probably about half of it. If we do keep having some cooler temperatures and some precipitation, that can delay some of the irrigation that we have throughout the city, then that will help how much we have to dig into that holdover amount that we have. That concludes my presentation, so if there's questions.
Perfect, thank you. Councilmember Smith.
So just comment on 2 or 3 things. Have we had to start using well number 6 that we use for PI?
We haven't used well number 6 yet. No.
Okay. The other thing that's interesting is I was meeting with a resident over the weekend, some questions about his property up in Angel's Landing, close to where the ridges at Alpine are being built. And it was good to go up there and walk around and look at that, because I had kind of forgot that that's up on a hill and it separates that part of Angel's Landing from Alpine. So it was kind of good to see it in person. But in the back of his property has a creek that usually doesn't run any water except when water comes out of the pressurized irrigation pond up there. And there was water running down it. So he says, I'm surprised there's water running down the creek.
Yeah, we'll get some drainage that goes through there. It could have been from the irrigation. I don't know that we were spilling any water in the
But this was
irrigation pond.
before the storms
Before
hit,
the
so
storm.
he was just kind of surprised. I mean, it was very pleasant, but he was just kind of said, I thought it came out of the irrigation pond. So I was just curious.
Yeah, that's part of the major drainage collection for that whole area up there. So
Right.
it was probably some runoff coming from somewhere else.
Okay. So I guess my biggest comment on this, I really appreciate your monitoring it. We've been lucky with a little cooler weather since the end of April and a few storms. I mean, it put a little snow up in the mountains again. Actually, a lot of snow down on Mount Nebo. It was kind of really interesting. But at the same time, I think the first thing we need to do is, and I've talked about this, is that we had such a dry winter that a lot of plants are kind of being resurrected right now because a lot of them got damaged a month ago from that really cold storm that came through. And I just think it's important right now to kind of get things surviving and then ration more if we have to later on. But I think the number one thing, and I think Councilwoman Rice mentioned the Lambert Park, different things, but I just think we need to be really proactive that any break in the system or whatever, that we got to get it fixed. Because the gusher there in the parkway near my property went on for a couple days or 3 days. And that was a lot of water that went into the gutter. So I just think, and everybody needs to be, through education, say, if you've got a bad sprinkler, you need to fix it. And, you know, I was talking to the city manager of Cedar Hills, and when they started doing their pressurized irrigation last year, they found one home that was using 1 million gallons, and it was a big leak. And so as we start monitoring, I think we can kind of identify, is there a leak somewhere? And I think that's the first thing I would do. That's my opinion. I'm not an engineer. I'm just, you know.
Doug?
I don't have anything else on this. It's always good and interesting information, and thanks for pulling it together and providing it.
You're welcome.
Ron?
Just one question. If we run out of water April the 1st, August 1st, how much would well number 6 be able to support the rest of the system if everything came out of well number 6 out of the aquifer? Is it 20%? 50?
It's probably, I'd say, what, 30%?
Maybe 30%?
We've got not that much. Oh.
How much?
Only 3 CFS. Yeah, we'd really.
So
don't.
that's not a backup system for our water, so. Yeah. Okay, that's the only question I had, because it really puts the onus on that's not a backup system. We don't have a backup system, so, I mean, we have a well that will
It's
support
more
it,
a
but it's
supplemental system.
Supplement, very small, so
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Councilmember Rice?
So Chris, tell me what you mean by holdover of 2,212 AF. I'm not
So
sure.
we have so much water that we can pull out of Deer Creek. If we don't use it all, then it can hold over. And we've been able to hold over certain amounts over the last couple of years, and it's kind of built up. So it's stored water that we have access to.
Okay, so we kind of accumulate
Yep,
that.
exactly.
And- okay, but that's all we've got.
We have our regular supply, but like I said, that's been cut in half. So we'll probably have to, if we want to keep up the amounts that we've been using in the past, we will have to be dipping into that holdover amount.
I just want to again compliment you of how kind you always are to me, and even though I constantly ask you questions, and how much I've learned when we went to the water seminar a couple of days ago. I learned a lot then, and I really appreciate the monitoring system that is helping me monitor and regulate my own system. I think it's made a difference in what I do and
Great.
everything. So I
awesome.
just really have to compliment you for
Thank you.
all of that. Thanks so much.
Maybe I should have been an educator.
What?
Maybe I should have been an educator. I like
no, it doesn't.
helping.
No.
Kim, do you have any questions?
No, you guys are amazing. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Sure.
So talking about well number 6, I thought when we did the statistics on it last year, it was 14% that added to our system then. I was surprised. So I think it's more than 10%.
I don't, honestly, I
We
don't
ought to see
recall
that presentation
statistic
again.
right off, but
Yeah.
I could go back and dig into some of the numbers.
He
No, it
remembers
just sticks in my
everything.
mind.
All right, do you want to talk to us about the Central Utah rebate program?
I'd love to do that.
I would love to hear it.
So Central Utah has changed their philosophy in rebates and incentive programs that they have for converting turf areas. It used to be that you had to adopt an ordinance as a city to get a rebate. And there's really a rebate through the state and a rebate through Central Utah, who partners with the state along with other districts throughout the state of Utah. Central Utah will now offer $1.50 per square foot whether or not a city adopts an ordinance. So anybody within their district is now eligible for this cost. That's not a small amount. I've actually applied for it myself just earlier this week to remove some of the turf I have in my park strip. I live on a corner lot. I have a side park strip. I have a front park strip. I actually have already pulled out some of the turf that I had in there to replace it with rocks, but even with what I have remaining, I could get, I'm eligible for a rebate of almost $1,400. So it's not insignificant what $1.50 per square foot actually means. Now that $1.50 could be doubled to $300 using the state if the city does want to consider adopting an ordinance. The ordinance requirements have kind of changed. It used to be in the past that your front and side yard could only have a maximum of 33% of turf grass in those areas. That's increased from 33% to 50%. You still cannot have lawn in the park strips, and you can't have any lawn in an area that's less than 8 feet in width. It's trying to remove some of the less usable turf areas and preserve that, your higher irrigation turf for areas that are actually more usable. So those are some changes that have made, and I guess the question is the city council, this is for all new development. We've talked before about enforcement. That would still be kind of an issue. I think Central Utah has given us some ideas that we can do to help kind of watch over the enforcement, but is this something that the city council might be interested in considering again?
So the question you need answered tonight is just yes or no, would we be interested in having this come back and having a discussion? So
correct.
That's all we need to know. Doug, yes or no?
Yes, I would be interested in that.
Ron?
Yes, but one caution, when you do go to that website, which I've gone to, and I was surprised that, yeah, you can get money now, even though I knew that we hadn't passed anything. But what, in order, on the drip system, for example, if you convert to drip system, there's specific guidelines, and everything I put in a drip system does not qualify. So I couldn't get a dime for all the drip because I use bubblers and these other things. So we need to caution the residents if they do this, they got to read the detail, because there is a very narrow products that they support, and they will not reimburse for other things.
That's correct. And there are other guidelines. I kind of hit some of the major ones, but you do have to apply for it. You have to have someone come out. You have to be kind of approved before you make any changes, remove any grass or anything like that. So,
and I'm sure we'll get into those details if we bring it back, which it looks like. Liz, what do you think?
Yes, I would, and I'd really like some pictures of what you've done so I can get an idea what to do.
Great.
Thanks, yeah.
100% yes.
Councilmember Smith?
So I support this. We had quite a discussion about this a few years ago. And there's 2 or 3 things I'd just like to make a comment. First of all, we don't need to look like Las Vegas. I mean, and when we had the Central Utah come and make suggestions, they said that actually it's good to have shrubs and vegetation and stuff because it actually saves more water in the end. So I think we need to be sure we explain to the citizens what exactly aeroscaping really entails. So, the American Fork Hospital got big time into xeriscaping, and it started to look like we were situated in a gravel pit. And it was interesting because last year they came in and took a bunch of that xeriscaping out and landscaped it because it looked ugly. And they weren't saving any money on water and stuff. So I think you've got to find the balance, and because we are not Las Vegas, but we do need to conserve. So yes, I'd like it to come back.
Thanks. They've really gone with a new term now called localscapes. That's really meant to be more local Utah, more drought tolerant plants, but definitely it doesn't. They are trying to avoid just rock mulch everywhere. They're trying to liven it up with, I think it can be or should be like 50% living material and only 50% non-living materials in organic.
Right.
So it sounds like you have the interest to bring it back.
Yeah, great.
Perfect. Splash pad.
Splash pad. So we've got some damage that's been done to the splash pad from skateboarders. So we've got this rock I took a picture of. We need to fix that before we can open the splash pad. We try to open it for Memorial Day weekend, but the repair won't take place until next week. So we'll be at least a week delayed before we can open that, just to make the council aware. We use our culinary water, so we don't use our PI water. So again, kind of like the water source that we're really concerned about isn't affected by splash pad use, but I guess part of the question that we have is optics by having a splash pad running. So we thought we'd at least give some information to the council. The water that we use is recirculated, so it goes through, it works its way through, it gets filtered, it gets cleaned out, and then it goes through and is reused. Depending on where the numbers come in, we'll have to flush every once in a while just because the numbers are getting kind of high and we need some clean, fresh water for it. But in past years, you can see that we generally use less than 500,000 gallon over the course of a season that we have. Last year, again, we started late because we were doing we had to make some repairs that didn't get done because of some part delays. So just by way of comparison, I know that Cedar Hills, they use closer to 1 million gallons a month, but they don't recirculate theirs. They run it through and then run it into their PI system where it goes into their irrigation. So it's not really a complete loss. Aaron solicited comments from other cities to see what they're doing as far as splash pads go this year. Lehigh stated that they have no restrictions unless they reach a phase 3 conservation plan, depending on where things go, and if that happens, then they will shut off their splash pads completely. Eagle Mountain actually has 2 different splash pads. One has recirculated water, the other one does not. They will not be using the one that does not have recirculated water, but their plan is to go forward with the one that does recirculate water. Again, Cedar Hills, Ephraim, Salem, Provo, Nephi Vineyard, they all plan on normal operations this year for their splash pad. Typically, we would run our splash pad from Memorial Day to Labor Day. We run it Monday through Saturday, and we run it for 10 hours a day from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So 10 hours is a nice number to kind of look at and see if we wanted to do a reduction in hours. If we reduced it by 4 hours, it would be a 40% reduction in use. If we wanted to reduce the number of days that we use it, we would get the same sort of probably reduction in water. We wouldn't see a reduction in manpower so much though, because we still would have to monitor it. And the less frequently it cycles, the more frequently we could have to flush the system. So it may actually not really be as effective to shut it down for days at a time or a day in the middle of the week. It really probably we would see better water savings if that's the goal, to actually just reduce the number of hours that we use or have the splash pad open. So a couple of options the council would have to consider is just continue normal operations. We could wait to open the splash pad a little bit later in the season. Like I said, we've already are going to have to wait at least a week depending on what happens with this repair, but we could choose to wait a little bit longer, maybe open it for Father's Day. I don't know. That's not usually the holiday you would see, but we could consider reduced hours of operation. We could consider reduced days of operation, although that probably would be one I would recommend not considering. It could be a combination of reduction of days, waiting to open, or we could go ahead with normal operations but reevaluate later in the summer depending on how things go. So would love to hear any comments that the council has.
Thank you, Chris. Councilmember Rice, what do you think?
So I heard you say that we would have to flush it more, but what about every other day? Would we still have to flush the system more?
I think ultimately we would, yeah.
You still would.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So I actually have several questions that they're on this, but does it affect the equipment if we don't run it? And sorry, these questions are coming out faster than you can answer. We don't run it on Sunday, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so, again, I'm back to appearances and how much, criticism it seems to be hitting with letting the water run wherever, but, which is not your fault, by the way. But I am really inclined to reduce the hours of operation, and of course, it's still pretty chilly. I mean, my hydrangeas are gone. I don't know if they'll recover. The freeze, the constant cold, I don't think it would hurt us to not open for a while. And then can you monitor that? I mean, when you say revisit this, like the end of June or 1st of July, I mean, it's always fun to have it probably for the 4th of July or that kind of thing. My first inclination, what I told Mayor Bills, was I just would like to see it probably not run much at all. But if it's going to hurt the equipment, I mean, when we first put this in, I remember that the maintenance on it was about $45,000 a year. I'm sure that has gone up. I don't know what the maintenance is on those kind of things, but I would reduce the hours of operation. We've got to preserve water, and that's kind of a lot of water, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Rodella, you're all about fun.
I am. I go with option number 6, normal operation, but reevaluate later in the summertime. I know the splash pad is one of our biggest features here in Highland City, and I know, like, if last year when we opened it late, I would say that was one of the areas in which I got the most phone calls on, is when is the splash pad going to open? So reducing hours, reducing operation, waiting to open it, we will definitely get residents who will not be happy about that. And this is something that young moms, young families look forward to every summer.
Councilmember Smith?
I lean to number 6 too. I think just reevaluate it later in the summer. Obviously, we're going to have a late start this year because of the repair. Let me ask a couple questions. So the recirculated water is culinary water, but it's not chlorinated.
Correct.
Right? And when it's circulated, I am sure with little kids in there are bodily fluids that are added to that recirculated water. How do you monitor the quality of the water, and do you add bromine or chlorine or anything to it?
We do have to add, and we have to test it. I think the requirement is hourly testing to see what the levels are. And absolutely, you're right. We get a lot of contamination, so to speak, from use on it. We also, dogs are not allowed, but that doesn't mean that there aren't dogs that people have let trot to cross the splash pad area that sometimes may get, contaminants into the water as well. So, and that's really what determines how often we might have to flush it, just how severe the contaminant levels get.
So when it gets bad, you flush it, but on a routine basis, if you're not flushing, do you add any chemicals to it?
We do. I believe we do add chlorine to the
chlorine or
splash pad for
bromine or
uses.
something? Okay.
What do you think, Councilmember Courtney?
I'm inclined also to go with number 6, but it would add 2 pieces onto it that I would really love to see an article it doesn't have to be big, but in the newsletter explaining that this isn't surface water that we're using. That's why we're recirculating. That's why we're keeping this running, and possibly some signage out by the park, because that is a reasonable thing for people to look at and wonder about. That why are they talking to us about water conservation when they're running this for 10 hours a day?
Great ideas, thank you. Councilmember Campbell, what are your thoughts?
Everything Kim, Scott, and Doug said, 100% 6. And especially what Doug was saying, we've got to do some education that this is recirculated water, so we're not using the water you're thinking. I'm looking at that $468,000 for annually, In my July of last year, and this is going to go on record and I hate it, my home, which is on a little over a quarter of an acre, was 107,000 gallons in 1 month. 107,000 in 1 month. That will never happen again. That was a wake-up call, startling. I mean, that's 5 homes, and yet we have a benefit like Kim is talking about that is fantastic, and I think we need to have that benefit for our residents.
Okay, it looks like you have 4 in favor of revisiting later in the summer, and then it looks like probably a good idea to advertise it as well.
Oh, I just have a question. On the rock that was damaged, was that recently happened, or has that been damaged for a while?
I think it's been fairly recent, this spring. I don't know for sure.
Haha, Jay. Haha.
Okay.
And can I
Yeah.
ask a quick question?
Sure.
No, I have one more question.
Hold on,
Mayor.
Councilmember Smith is asking a question.
So, don't we have security cameras looking at that?
They don't work.
No, we don't.
How much would it cost us to do that?
We actually looked at security cameras last year for budget. I don't recall what those prices were, though.
I'd be interested, because the splash pad, you think you'd want a security camera for 2 reasons. You have a lot of little kids there, and the other thing is to kind of prevent vandalism. Because for some reason or other, there's a demographic that likes to vandalize, or they don't think about it, and, yeah.
Councilmember Rice, did you have a question?
Well, I was just, tell me one more time where the water goes after we flush it?
After we flush it, it goes down at the sewer system.
We don't send it into the
Once we
PI
flush it, yeah.
or anything like that?
It goes. It can't go anywhere else. It
Yeah.
has to.
I don't, I would like to see it reduced, the hours a little bit. I mean, it doesn't mean shut it off, but clearly I'm outnumbered here again, but I think that we're going to probably take some questions on that with some, why are we letting it run? But it's fine. I don't care. But
Okay, Chris, do you have the answers that you need?
Yes, thank you.
Mayor
Perfect.
Bales?
Yes.
Can I, over here, can I ask a quick question about cameras and security? That complex has lighting that is rarely used. Is there a reason we don't turn those on? I'm just curious.
I don't know that there's a reason why they're not on. I think some of the bulbs may have been burnt out and stuff. I know that they've replaced them in the past, but I can follow up.
I'm just curious. I've noticed that, that we don't.
More light would make it more secure.
That's a great thought.
Lighting's the cheapest insurance you can buy.
Okay, good. Thank you, Chief. Rob, amaze us with your report.
Just one item that
No, that's not amazing.
Highland Mains.
Oh, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
So, just so you are aware, under the development agreement, architecture approval only goes to Planning Commission, which is the way the code was set up before, and so they've locked that in. So, the council will not be seeing this, but I wanted to give you the heads up. I think this is actually very exciting. So the northeast corner, so just south of the church parking lot there, is coming in. It was planned for a large 2-story office building, and we are getting a large 2-story office building. So the reason it has to go to Planning Commission is because this was what was in the development agreement, the concept that was approved. The developer doesn't want to do this. They want to do this instead. So I think this matches the Highland Mains aesthetic a lot more and is a lot nicer of a building. So they do have to get approval because they're deviating from the plan, but I think it's a very good deviation. This developer also is buying the northwest corner, so the development there will be under the same developer going forward. So that's all that I have in terms of an update.
Thank you. And if we have any comments or concerns, we can take those to Planning Commission?
Correct, next week.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. We are done with the regular agenda. Do we need to dismiss, or we can just go right into the work session, right?
Let's go right in.
Okay, let's do it.
Mayor, on this one, so we were thinking that we don't think it's reasonable to have a conversation both on detached accessory dwelling units as well as PI rates. If it's okay with you, we think we will punt on detached accessory dwelling units to a future meeting and just move to PI rates, just so we can, because we have some extra people who have come here for the PI ones, if that's okay with you.
I think that's a great idea, and I think also if we would all take a minute to rewatch Planning Commission, because they had a lot of great ideas and suggestions, so I think that would also be really great before our next meeting.
Do we want to set a separate meeting for, I'll be honest, June meetings are going to be heavy with budget, both meetings. And so do we want to set a separate meeting, or would you like to potentially add this to like a July work session?
I don't remember what the timing is for the budget presentation. We have one tomorrow, yes? I have it on my calendar at least.
Oh, that was something we planned early on and decided not to. We didn't
okay.
need to do.
Okay.
We'll do
I was just wondering if we could
later.
just stack it at the end of that, but if we're, okay.
Yeah.
So what are the options for that,
The
Erin?
options, if you want to add a meeting, would be June 9th, 30th, or July 14th. Those are either, what would they be, second or fifth Tuesdays, where we don't have something. Or if you wanted to just try to tack it on to a July council meeting as a work session at the end.
I'd prefer to tack it on.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable approach to me.
I agree with that, as long as when we go into that meeting, we all will have watched. Because when I've watched it, and I've now watched it 1.5 times, I'm only halfway through the second time, I've learned the questions that I had about ADUs and the distance. They really have done a lot of work, that Planning Commission. And we need to respect that. And are there decisions they made that I would have made a little differently? Yeah, but not one of them is a deal breaker for me. It's like, yeah, I get what they're saying. They decided and so I like the recommendations, but that needs to be our starting point, not down at the bottom. So I hope we all take the time to watch that 2 or 3 times. I guarantee you can learn it. And I just found out today from Erin that if you pay premium price for YouTube, you can triple speed it. I double speed it, but triple speed I'm excited about, because I can still understand what they're saying, but it goes a lot faster.
So,
Rice
I'm Mayor Pro Tem right now. Brittany asked me, so Councilwoman Rice, do you have some comments?
So July is really bad for me. That is my vacation month, and I will be in and out, and doing it on an off week of council. I mean, just attach it on, it's fine. But, I mean, if you have a separate work session, please don't put it in July. That's my only request.
Okay, I'm hearing add it to a meeting in July as a work session, if I understood Mayor Pro Tem the direction.
I think that's what I'm hearing.
Okay, we will move forward with that. And just to speak to Councilmember Campbell's point, we actually planned on having a member of the Planning Commission come and kind of present to council their original thoughts, kind of like a summary of what they were thinking. I'm not saying don't go watch the video, because I think it would be enlightening as well, but just so you know, we wanted to make sure that was part of the discussion. So we will do that at whatever meeting we decide to schedule in July. Good. So. And if you're okay, Mayor Pro Tem, we're going to excuse some staff members and then dive into PI rates for our work session.
So moved.
Okay.
But not the engineer. Because it's PI.
Tag team this with Tavis a little bit. So wanted to kind of talk a little bit about history, PI rates. So 2022, 2023, the state legislature passed certain bills that require all secondary pressurized connections to be metered by January 1st of 2030. Part of the intent is that metered residential properties have been shown to decrease their water usage by up to 40%. Meters empowers users to more accurately track their usage, detect leaks or breaks in the system, and identify unnecessary waste. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, and when we had our open house last week, we actually were able to walk through one resident who came in and identify that he had a leak on his system. So We couldn't help find where the leak was at, unfortunately, by adding the meters, but just the fact that he,
Was
has
aware.
that knowledge now, that's one of the big benefits that we do get from metering our systems. Water conserved through metering extends Utah's drinking water supplies, protects our drinking water, and helps maintain healthy lake reservoir levels. Saving water now is an investment in Utah's future, ensuring our children and grandchildren inherit an ecologically rich and beautiful state. That was taken verbatim off of the state's site. So,
Can I ask a question about
Yes, sir.
that? So culinary water, most of what in a lot of the state is well water.
mm-hmm.
How does metering pressurized irrigation increase culinary water?
Well, water's kind of water. Our aquifers
I mean, water's water.
are fed, through surface water runoff and stuff like that. I think the drought, we will see decreases in our aquifer levels. And so I think they kind of treat everything as all in one.
But pressurized irrigation usually goes into the ground, doesn't it? I mean, there is some runoff that goes down into
There
the
is some
lake.
runoff, but if it goes into the ground, hopefully it's recharging our
So
aquifers.
pressurized irrigation, I think, would be recharging the culinary water. I'm just curious that comment.
Yeah, and a lot of that depends on how it's used, though. Water is a finite source.
Sure.
Water is not neither made, created, nor destroyed. It just changes, its form throughout the hydrologic cycle. I'm sure you've seen pictures and diagrams of all that, how all that works. Not all of it goes into the ground. Some of it's evaporated or, evapotranspirated away. So that's always part of it, but.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just curious. So we have the storm sewer drains that collects rainwater a lot of times off our streets. If there's a broken water line or that, it goes into the storm sewer. Doesn't the storm sewer then go into the main sewer? Where does that water go?
Most of our storm sewers in Highland City goes into sumps that percolates the water into the ground. So it
Okay,
will
so it
recharge.
recharges the pressurized irrigation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Probably
helpful.
depends a little bit on the geology right there, whether or not it actually makes it down into the aquifers.
The aquifers we use, when you look at kind of, subsurface, there's different lenses that you go through. Some of them will go deeper than others. We look at different wells. We very possibly are tapped into different sources when we're looking at those wells. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
just
welcome.
curious.
I thought we'd maybe take a second, if it's okay, to talk about water rights and water shares. Water rights are permissions that are granted by the state of Utah. They're kind of the overseer through the state engineer's office of all the water in the state. It's a specific amount of water, public water, that's defined for a specific purpose and in a specific location. Most groundwater sources fall under, that definition as a water right. Water shares represent a fractional ownership in a company, such as an irrigation company or a ditch company, canal company that holds water rights. So that's usually what you look at for surface water. So we have water shares through American Fork Irrigation, Lehigh Irrigation, Provo River. Surface waters can fluctuate depending on how much water there really is available. Shares will fluctuate proportionately. So if a groundwater source or a surface water source, is only running at 50%, the shares are going to be reduced by 50%. And that's where we have some issues when we do see reductions. People don't always realize that. They kind of, assume that they have just as much water available, and that's not always the case. Is there a question?
I was just laughing down here about wet water, because I always thought all water was wet, but you're referring to shares.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about paper water too.
Yeah,
And
so you're talking about
people-
the difference between wet water and paper water.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Chris,
Yes.
if this is more than just a really quick answer, let's catch up afterward. But when it says that a specific amount of public water for a defined purpose and location with water rights, how specific is that defined purpose?
Fairly defined. I guess maybe it's not a short answer, but municipal use versus agricultural use usually are the two main differences that you would see. Water rights in Utah have kind of been over allocated because I think there's maybe some naivete or maybe some misunderstanding of really how much groundwater there is. So the state has looked at areas where maybe it's been over allocated and maybe there needs to be a reduction in how much water rights people actually have. There's been sinkholes that have kind of happened in certain areas of the state because they're mining water that just isn't there, and they're creating voids. So,
is it accurate to say that a water right isn't really a right to water, it's a right to ask for the water, and then it depends on where you are in the pecking order list of whether you get that water and how much water you get?
that's kind of a way to look at it. Definitely when you're looking at priority dates, the older your priority dates go, the more substantial your right to use that water is. Yeah, for sure. So water dedication, and we're talking a little bit about paper water in this case. So when new subdivisions or commercial projects come into the city, they're required to provide this paper water to the city. Usually the city is given water rights in existing wells or water that can be transferred into one of our existing wells to provide for indoor water demand that will be expected to supply that residential or that development. Usually water shares are provided to the city to meet the outdoor irrigation water demands that we have again for that same development. In some instances, homes, especially in older sections of the cities, were built prior to the implementation of the Highland City PI system. They hadn't provided water rights or shares for the PI system. So in these instances, the cities has entered into PI agreements with certain residents to provide city with water shares, which were paid. So the city, I'm going to go off script a little bit. The city had excess water, so we basically would sell this to residents and get repaid over the course of like 30 years for the water that we gave them. Or they were allowed to like turn over water shares that they might have already had in these irrigation agreements to, provide us with the ability to provide them with water. These PI agreements were never intended to imply that the residents would never have their use metered or that the residents would have an unlimited amount of water. It's all based, again, on how much is defined as part of that underlying water right that we have for that source.
So that needs some education, obviously, because we heard from Wayne Stewart a little different slant on really the same structure of what's happened, but a different perspective on what it meant. And what it meant is more what you're saying than what I think he is believing it's saying.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And even when he came today, I got a little different perspective on what he might have been trying to say than what I thought I heard 2 weeks ago when he came here. Yeah. We've talked about residents claiming to be grandfathered in. We've heard that from a lot of people. We very possibly, this came from when the city first started to implement the secondary irrigation. I can see the city fully expecting to never meter this water. Yeah. I'm sure, it's not a stretch to think that somebody didn't say, it'll never be metered, just give us the water.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I if I was in that situation, would say, yeah, you'll never be metered, but obviously it's kind of hard to really ever make that statement. You'll never be anything, right? It's also possible residents who paid for paper water through their utility bills, which I think was the case with Mr. Stewart, had the understanding that they were exempt from being billed for usage or that their water would never be metered through that. It's also possible that there's some confusion from residents who previously had been on irrigation water, where you're only allowed to take it at certain times as determined by the irrigation companies, and sometimes that's between like midnight and 3 a.m. every 10 days or something like that. It's very possible that statements were made saying you can water whenever you want because now you're connected to a pressurized irrigation system. You will always have access to it. You can water whenever it's convenient, but that might have been construed differently. Or again, this has been over the course of 40 years, sometimes things, mindsets shift in that time, So I agree. I think we need some education. I did review one of the PI agreements that we have to see what it states. It actually,
I think goes the opposite direction from saying will never be metered or usage. It actually says the city does have the ability to restrict your usage in times when we need to, for broken water lines or in drought when the water is not really available. So it doesn't say that they'll never be metered anywhere that I saw, unless there's another agreement out there that the city's entered into that we are not aware of. But we've tried to ask residents, and if Mr. Stewart finds something that somebody's entered into and can show it, I'll certainly try to see if we can
I think as we move forward with this, it'll be really critically important that we get armed with as much information as we can to answer those questions, because we will get the questions, and it's not isolated that he believes it this way. There's going to be others that believe it that way, and we need to have the answers. So we need the staff to help us with that dialogue of what is the history, what's the reality, and where are we going from here?
Absolutely. Well, we'll certainly provide the council with as much information as we can garner.
So this will be kind of a comment question. So at the turn of the 20th, 21st century, so there's no confusion there, we did have a city manager at that time when they were doing it, and I won't mention names, who oftentimes made verbal agreements with people that were not documented. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that's where some of the misrepresentation, because I think it was an attempt to kind of sell the PI system, and at the same time, but there's things that have changed. When we have a state mandate or law that we have to follow, right? We've got to meter. I mean, I'd just soon we didn't have to meter, but we need to. And the other thing is in that period of time, the city has increased 4 times in population. So we don't have this unlimited water supply. And I think that needs to go into the education. So we're following state law. We're trying to conserve water because we have a much bigger population basis. And I grew up in Pleasant Grove. My dad, who's passed away 19 years ago, fretted his whole life that there wouldn't be enough water. And I thought, if he was here now and see the population, the county commission that I sat by yesterday at the Public Health Board said we have officially 750,000 people in Utah County. So I just think it's an education thing, because I've been told by several residents, they told me I would, 1, never be metered, and 2, I'd have unlimited water. And it's just like, there isn't unlimited water, unfortunately. So I think we need to respect it, but I'd like to see if that's true, if we have written agreements back in there that that's the case, then we need to, I think, follow those. But at the same time, I just don't think we have unlimited water, and we all know that.
And the other kind of comment I had on there is, even if we do have some sort of agreements, is it really valid with the new state laws? I mean, is it something that we can enforce, or how do we work through that? And if that's the case, we'll have to figure that out when we get to that point. So when we look at dedication of water to the city, developments are required to dedicate 3 acre-feet per acre for our residential developments. Lots are then kind of assessed. Of that 3 acre-feet, 2.5 acre-feet goes for that individual lot, with the remaining 0.5% just being kind of assumed for system losses that we would have as the system provider. Assuming that half of a lot is irrigated, with the remaining portion of the lot, being used for the house footprint, for the driveway, for whatever else you might have. It really, you could look at irrigating about 5 acre-feet per irrigable acre on any given residential lot. The concern we have is that when residents use more water than what was provided for their lot, they're really extracting more than what they are legally entitled to, and are adding additional burden to an already overburdened supply. And we have this table that on the left that kind of looks at what other cities have used for application rates, and you can see Saratoga Springs is at 2.6% for irrigable acre of irrigation. If you look at Highland City, kind of towards the bottom, we've been as high as 6.2%, as low as 5.1%, and even last 2025 we were at like 5.8 acre-feet per irrigable acre. not percentage, I'm sorry.
So why are we so much more?
Well, I
than
think
anybody?
that's a good question. I think a lot of it is perspective from residents that we have. We just think that we can. We think that we should water that. Residents haven't learned. I will say that I think in Highland, probably more than a lot of other cities, residents have their landscape maintained by a maintenance company. I think maintenance companies, it's probably cheaper for them to up your water time than it is for them to put fertilizer out or iron or other nutrients on your lawn. So I think I very well think that there could be a lot of residents who, you know, when you first get sod, you water a lot, and they've never bother to change their system because they just, again, have people do that. I think Tavis might have some comments.
Yeah, just on the rates that are shown, those are all rates from metered systems. So that's where the study came from, for meter systems. So that's the other reason. Highland, we just use more water. We don't know how much we're using. But yeah, it's not metered.
So that's a good point.
You just open it up and
maybe now that it's metered and people can actually see what they're using, we'll see those rates going down.
It could drop down.
Yeah.
The irrigated area here, is that irrigable land or is that total lot size?
That's irrigable land.
So that's taking out.
Are you talking about on the
on
table?
the chart?
On the chart?
Yeah, the second column over, that's irrigated area.
yeah, so that's
That's taking out the houses and the driveways. Okay.
the sods, the flower beds.
Yeah. Yep. So currently, residents are charged $24.14 plus a per square foot portion based on their lot. So your rates go up based on how big your lot is. The ideal scenario, as we're trying to look at different rates, is that if residents use their allotment, what they should have for their lot size, that they pay just as much now, or they will pay just as much with the implementation of these rates as they're paying now. It's flat, you know, no real increases. Unfortunately, right now, looking through some of the meter usage that we had last year, about 80% of our residents are using more than that allocation. As we've looked at structuring different rates, though, we've got different tiers that we're looking at, and we're trying to capture the revenue that's going to cover what our costs are for the system. And we're using that based on what is actually allocated to the system. So when we look at PI rates, we'll look at a base rate and we'll look at probably some tiered rates on top of that. So the base rate, you know, is intended to cover a majority of the revenue requirements for a PI system. The costs include staff and operation and maintenance of our facilities. The proposed base rates, similar to the existing base rate, has two components: the fee to support the system and a fee that's relative to the size of the lot and the amount of water that can be delivered to the lot. So there's kind of two different philosophies that we looked at as we were going through this. And philosophy one is a base rate that's based on a flat dollar amount plus lot square footage. And kind of the advantage with that scenario or that philosophy is it provides a little bit more of a balanced approach and a little bit more flatter approach between different lot sizes. Or there's a philosophy two that's a base rate that's based solely on square footage of lot. I guess maybe the con to that is that smaller lots are less incentivized to conserve doing something like that, but larger lots tend to pick up a little bit larger proportions. So kind of thought we'd take a pause and see if there's any input from council on.
Or is it the splash pad that we've added in there?
No.
I'm being sarcastic.
So will we be looking at a tiered system?
We are
where
looking at a
we
tiered
are
system. Yeah.
Rewarding those, maybe half price.
That's completely the intent, yes.
Very good,
Yes.
very good.
We are, in fact, not just looking at it, we are required to have one by 2030, I think. And the tiers specifically have to be made at least partly with an eye toward conservation, if I correctly recall state law. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You generally correctly recall state law. I'm remembering correctly.
I used to tell people I'm fairly semi-educated.
And we can look at that a little bit more. Maybe keep this in the back of your mind as we look at some of our different things. So again, tiered rates. We want a tiered rate system. Different rates charged based on the amount of water used each month. It encourages water conservation by rewarding customers who use less water while discouraging excessive use beyond the allotment. We've looked at a 6-tier rate structure for our proposal. The remainder revenue of the PI budget would be covered through actual use of the tiered rates. For the purposes of the budget modeling, it was anticipated that the required revenue could be generated if everyone used only their allotment. Tiered rates would also be consistent with the city's current drinking water billing structure. Maybe pause a little bit here. You know, I know that there's other cities that have implemented conservation tiered rates, and they've based their rate structure on what people were using before the tier. A very minimal cost per 1,000 gallons. Tier number 2 would be basically between the 50 and 75%, and tier number 3 would be if you used up to 100% of your allotment. So that's where we would think people that are using what they need to use would be.
1,000 gallons in what period of time?
Per month.
Per month?
Tier number 4 goes up to 150%, and then you can see 5 and 6 go up to 200 and 250, and you can see how much more the cost per 1,000 gallons go as we go up and up. And part of the basis of that is it becomes more punitive if people are using that much more than their allotment. It's water that they're not necessarily really legally entitled to. And, you know, it could actually also mean that we have to make adjustments to our system to be able to provide that much additional water to those residents who do use that much more.
When we get to the point that we're going to be approving a structure like this, would we have the benefit of knowing what other cities around us are planning to charge or are currently charging so that we can see where we fit in with everybody else?
We definitely have looked at other cities, and we actually have looked a little bit at Alpine City, and their rates are lower than ours. And so we chose not to really include that as part of this, but
yeah.
But the basis of that is without having an understanding of what their revenue needs are for
they use culinary water.
Because
they don't even
every
use surface
city
water.
is different in what they need to come up with.
Sure.
Yeah, they don't have PI.
I do have a question. So you said you didn't use Alpines, but you remember when we...
This is very similar to
It's very
Alpines.
similar. Because if we go by last year's rates, and I've used a couple of neighbors plus myself, remember what we did? It was really high. I mean, it was unmercifully high, so.
Yeah.
Kim, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. So Cedar Hills has already implemented their tiered rates.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what they're doing? Or
something similar?
Something similar to this?
Similar to this, yes.
Okay.
From what I understand.
Yeah, I think most all cities, Saratoga Springs,
Yeah.
Pleasant Grove, Linden,
Provo,
and
okay.
Spanish Fork, anyone that has a PI system, especially in Utah County, this is the way.
I would like to see a spreadsheet on that when we get to our final
Okay.
recommendation from the staff of what you're recommending. I'd like to see how it fits with everybody else.
Zach, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's probably a comment at this point, but similar with regard to spreadsheets, once we start looking and deciding about actually setting rates, if it is not onerously difficult to do, I would really like to see, take our 25th percentile, our median, our 75th percentile, and our 90th percentile users, and see, okay, what's their current monthly cost? What's their monthly cost going to be going forward?
That's our intent. Yeah, we've started down that path.
So Chris, go ahead. I have one more question. When you're done, were you done?
I'm ready to answer questions.
So I've been asked this question by multiple residents, and I have not had an answer. But, I mean, this isn't a revenue maker, and I've told them no. So I hope I'm not wrong in that.
That's not our intent to be a revenue
Okay.
maker. We've looked at it, and I think I'll get in the presentation a little bit more on the finance side of things of where we're at currently, what we're collecting as far as our needs for our revenue, for our O&M, for our system, and we're not trying to get more than that.
And then I had this question answered, but I think it needs to go on the record. I asked this at the open house your people were great, honestly, but they, I think the question it keeps coming back. Are we, I mean, I thought Alpines was higher than like Saratoga Springs or Spanish Fork or whatever. Is that not true?
No, I know, at least
Okay.
as a resident of Saratoga Springs, theirs is quite high.
Saratoga's is quite high,
And
even though
they
have
actually have their rate that they have, and then they have a drought rate that reduces the allotments by 20%.
Okay.
So it's.
And we're not doing that.
We haven't recommended that.
Okay.
At this point.
So,
but, you know, part of that is too, you know, when you look at PI systems, cities that have access to lower quality, high quantity surface water are the ones that have PI system. A lot of Saratoga's PI has to come from wells. They've got limited surface water rights there. That Highland has a better portfolio of surface water rights.
and our water would, I mean, these rates would apply no matter where it comes from. So like when we
Correct.
start to use Jordan now, or wherever, Provo, where it's would not adjust, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've looked at a few different options. So option one is a $15 base with a square footage cost plus tiered uses on top of that. That kind of follows a little bit more of the philosophy one that we mentioned earlier. We came up with options 2, 3, and 4 that are just based on your square footage to set what the base rate is. But we've tried to capture 50% of our needed revenue for option number 2 in the base rate. And then we've gone with like a 75% and or 67% for option number 3 and a 75% for option 4. And the thought behind that is the more that we look at the revenue that we need to collect in base rate, the higher that percentage is, the less appeal there is to conserve, because you're not getting as much penalized for the tiered system. So I think of these different options that we have, staff really seems to like option number 1 the best. But option number 3 of the different square footage costs we like, because it doesn't put too much onerous on the base rate to collect those revenues. It still provides some advantages to conservation. And throwing this out there, but if there's any comments or questions or thoughts by the council, please feel free to let me know what those are.
I do have a question. Yeah, so I need to go back to, like the flood irrigation, right? And there are a couple of neighborhoods that still do that. And I was out walking not too long ago, and there was a lady out in front, and the water was just running down the gutter. I mean, a lot of water. It wasn't a trickle. And I said, "Hey, is this your water?" She didn't know who I was. Is this your water? Yeah, and you can't do anything about it. I went, whoa, okay, well, I'm not trying to. I was just wondering, why it's not being turned out into their yards or their garden or wherever it's supposed to go. That I didn't really ask her after that, but
Yeah, there's
those
still,
things worry me a little bit.
There's still a few ditches that go through Highland City. I know, I think talking with Ernie, he'd love for those to get converted over to city water. He'd love to see those not maintaining, because as you get fewer and fewer users on any sort of a system like that, it just becomes harder and harder to really maintain and get enough water to where it actually flows down the ditch. So, but there are a few of those that are still on the system, or still within the city. Yeah.
And I just need to comment on this, but when we went to the water seminar on Monday, And, people always say, well, we're not restricting our indoor use, right? This is strictly PI, and I understand that. I try to tell people that. But that was brought up more than once. And I think we need to really, let the council know or let the people know that it's more serious than just the PI you're using, so.
It's interesting because I actually just met with the Great Salt Lake Commission, and it was really eye-opening because they essentially said the Great Salt Lake would not have a water conservation issue if municipalities and entities watered the way they are supposed to and use their water shares the way they're supposed to. This water metering is going to be groundbreaking, but they did actually say our indoor water use doesn't really have an effect on it, and to use as much as you possibly want indoor. Take a hour-long shower if you want to, Great Salt Lake. But they did say that watering, if every single municipality actually watered their lawn the way they were supposed to and used the water the way they were supposed to, their shares, we would not have a water issue within there. Anyway.
So I can provide some additional background for that if you want. I mean, most of the water that you use indoors ends up at TSSD, and then eventually it ends up in the Great Salt Lake. So I'm sure they said use as much water indoors as you want. The state and, I think the nation in general has made a lot of strides as far as conservation inside, as far as low flow toilets and low flow shower heads and other things like that. Low flow dishwashers, washing machines. So I think there's already been a lot of conservation. It's hard to cut back a whole lot more. There's also been, there was a big push for reuse water, trying to reuse some of the treated water that comes out of TSSD, which I think is going to be shut down by the state. So that does all end up in the Great Salt Lake. So it makes sense that they would say that.
Right, from the standpoint of water volume into the Great Salt Lake, not so much from the standpoint of our aquifer's ability to continue providing culinary water to our growing population.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
That would make sense from the standpoint of getting water into the Great Salt Lake, not so much from the standpoint of having our aquifers continue to be able to provide what we need for our growing population.
Yeah, that's a good statement.
So they weren't right in saying that it's indoor water? Is that your take on that? That we need to still watch it?
I would say we still need to watch it. If we have declining aquifer, levels, that's going to be an issue for cities. We talked a lot about that. We talked about the ability to meet it. So I wouldn't say that it's not something to be considered. One of the big advantages of trying to reuse water is every water right, and we're kind of, I'm kind of getting into the weeds, so if you want me to shut up, I will. Water rights have a consumable portion to it, and then they have kind of a return portion of it that needs to go into the system that ends up in the Great Salt Lake. A lot of times when we're using water rights in a culinary system, we're not using our complete consumable amount. So it would make sense from a water rights standpoint that we take a portion of that water that's been treated and we bring it back to the cities and we use that for outdoor irrigation. So that we're actually using the full amount of consumable water that we have, and then we are reducing how much water we actually have to pull out of our our groundwater or what we need, water sources. We don't need the supplemental wells that we have, so those things do affect our aquifer levels.
The culinary water currently has overcharge options. If we overuse our culinary in our homes, we do get charged more for that overuse, a penalty, if you will. Mm-hmm. So we've already got a system in place for water conservation incentives for our residents on our culinary water.
Yeah.
But we don't reward them. I guess the reward is the less you use, right?
Yeah.
That's the reward.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'd love any feedback that the council has on any of these rate options. We'd love to talk about implementation time frame for the new rates to take effect. a couple of our goals as we go through this, we've talked about it before tonight, education. We want to let residents understand what the allotment that they have versus their actual used amount is. If residents could go away and say, I don't have unlimited water, I can't just use as much as I can, this is how much I have really to use, I think that would be great. We would like to be able to update our website so residents know kind of what we're looking at. We want to be able to provide some usage in our billing so residents in that form can see what they have. We'd like to provide a calculator once we determine our rates so that residents really know what they'd be charged if these rates were in effect now. The thought that we've kind of had is that we could continue to monitor the meter usage, how much people are using through 2026, come back again, reevaluate it a little bit in the fall after the irrigation season and make any adjustments that we have. Revise our rates the winter of 2026 so that we can finalize and implement new rates for 2027. But I've got some question marks there because is that what the council wants to see? That's kind of what we've been working towards through staff, but should we hold off on that kind of an implementation schedule?
I do have a question, and I think this ties in with that, but maybe not. So, like, I'm on equal pay with Rocky Mountain Power because I cannot afford July, August, and September. Those are my worst months. My worst months with water, too, what we found out, right? What are the chances of us doing an equal pay type thing on PI water? Is that just hard for the city to do?
I think it would probably be hard, but honestly, it's not a question that I've asked or I've looked at. I don't know how easy, Cassell is to do something like that. I guess, with equal pay with Rocky Mountain or with, your gas companies, it depends on how much you use and they'll adjust it the next year if your usage is up or down from that. So.
And then it bumps it up. So if I use, so then my
more.
rate changes the next year. Actually, this changed.
Yeah.
It also drops though as well.
Yeah.
Based
on your usage.
I just think that might be a good idea.
It's definitely something we can look at and see how possible that would be.
Councilmember Smith, you have some comments, questions?
The only comment I really had is, one, we're going to have to do a lot of education. Two, I like a lot of the things that you presented. And I like this, basically this chronological ideas. I think there's no reason why we can't be ready to finalize and implement the rates. It'd be by April 15th when we turn on the system, right? Mm-hmm. So that gives us almost a year. And plus you've got all the data. I think the Councilwoman Rice has made some interesting things about maybe spreading it out through the year. I don't know. We can talk about that, certainly.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I think as long as we build in, because right now we have a fixed rate that's actually quite expensive. We pay more for PI than we do for culinary, and we have to process the culinary far more. It seems like it would cost us less to provide it. But we have to buy the secondary if there's reasons for that cost. But if we build in the tiers where under usage would actually create for resident A, who's using much less than resident B, will actually pay less than what they're paying now. If we've got that option built in, I think the residents would feel a little bit better about, you're going to charge me for usage. You've never done that before. Well, we don't have an option. We could delay it. We're choosing not to because we want to start the conservation benefit of charging on this tier system, but the tier needs to be built in for those who are using less, have a bonus from that. They're actually going to pay less than they're currently paying. And as long as residents know I have that option, if I can really get my water usage down, I don't have to pay this fixed rate that's pretty high right now.
Doug, what were your questions?
Yeah, I had, I'm a little bit concerned about implementing this for 2027. We could go back and use 2025 data for comparison versus current system to new system. I don't think we want to use 2026 data for any of that because we're expecting 2026 to be very unusual year in terms of usage. So that wouldn't necessarily be a reason why we couldn't go until start it in 2027. But I am a little bit concerned about, and Liz, you may have mentioned this to me, I don't remember, about the perception of users that their allocations in the future will be based on their current usage. And to the extent that that is a perception that is out there, then it harms our 2026 conservation by starting it in 2027. Yeah. So if we are starting in 2027, then I think we really need to do a hard push education-wise about how the rates are set and that it's not based on your personal past usage. And I think that when we do the comparison, we need to look at 2025 data to the new system rather than 2026 data to the new system. That having been said, I just based on a quick look that we got, option 2 seems like a pretty reasonable option there for me. I like having the base.
So option 2 that had 50% of the base that counts towards the revenue.
Right. And if I understood your some of your initial comments correctly, that we will plan on, in the case of option 2, to pick something, we'd plan on, well, in any of them, I guess, we plan on meeting our costs if everybody was based on the usage at 3/4 of an acre, for example. Anticipating that the tiered rate will cause some conservation, and so we don't want to set our rates to make exactly
on
what
exact usage. Yeah, it would be based more on.
And I, first of all, I think that's a wise choice. It prevents us from having to come back every year raising rates as people cut their usage. But I would like to be sure that we take a look, come up with a plan for whatever that excess revenue we're going to be getting. Okay, this is our plan for going forward, and I think that some spending and efforts on conservation would be a really good choice for that.
I think that's great. A great idea. Yeah, I think, and I'll admit that to kind of get a good feel for this, we need to give some real-world examples. So we'll bring something back to the council, but we wanted to have kind of a starting point with this. So,
Councilwoman Rodella.
Yeah, I just had the opportunity to meet with the city of Cedar Hills, going over their water meters as part of my job with the governor's office, and that's one of the things I do is meet with basically a bunch of cities and going over their secondary water meter system. And essentially, I water resources with DNR to do that marketing, got a grant from them. And they essentially said because of that marketing and campaign, less than 30 people have actually paid for excess water. After there was that communication, people figured it out and were able to lower their water. And essentially, I think that's going to be the same thing that'll happen to Highland as well, is just that understanding and getting a better sense of how to water appropriately. So I would like this implemented in 2027, and then looking at areas, again, collaboration with other cities. No reason to regurgitate how to do this. Go talk to Cedar Hills, Alpine, other cities that have already implemented it, and let's just do it how they did it if it was successful.
Great. You can do that.
I do have another comment.
Okay.
Do you mind?
Sure.
So, first of all, we don't have the chart up on the website right now. I mean, I'm on that website a couple of times. We do have a chart.
No, we do not.
We do not. So, I truthfully suggest that, we put it up, that this is kind of what we're looking at. You take a look at what you're going to do, or what you're going to be. And I kind of like what Doug said, that maybe we take it from 2025. I don't know, because I'm really trying to cut back a lot on my water. But I just want to be, when I have to explain this to residents, I want to make sure I've got it right. So when we look at like option 2, which seems to be the favorite, and we always seem to go with what one or two say, but so 50% of the revenue goal plus 50% of the tier usage. So if I'm allowed 65,000 gallons, and that's what we're allowed on a half acre, then when I hit what? Now you take it from there so I can re-explain this to residents, because I am going to have a cottage meeting about this. I've got multiple questions from people.
So when you hit your allotment that you have, your costs would go up depending on which different, structure we're looking at, by another 20%, somewhere on the tier 3, you're looking at somewhere between 60 to 85 cents per gallon, per 1,000 gallons. Tier 4, we're showing it at $1 per 1,000 gallons per month. Yeah.
But tiers 1 through 3 is your allotment. So if you were provided 65,000, you would just be tiers 1 through 3.
1, 2, and 3.
And then
Okay.
that other table that you had.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just use your allotment, and you're close to a half acre, you could see in option 2, you'd be somewhere in the $530.
Okay.
So you'd be roughly what you're paying right now.
What I'm paying right now.
Over a year.
Over a year. But
Yeah,
okay.
A little bit less in the winter.
Well,
and then, kind of
a little
go
more.
up and
Well,
down.
July, August, and September of last year was, I'm embarrassed.
Councilmember Smith, you wanted to make a comment? Or you look like you do. No?
I do. No, the comment I had, is this available to us in our email or website?
We can make it available.
Okay, I didn't think I'd seen it, but I appreciate all the work you've done. I'd just like to be able to study it more and think through it.
Ron?
How do we charge on months that we're not using the PI?
You're just charged your base rate.
The base rate of we're currently charging?
No, it would be the base rate of our new PIC.
Of the new, got it, okay. So that number was probably going to be less than what we're doing now.
Correct.
Very good.
So
Okay.
your winter months would actually go down where your summer months would go up.
Yep.
I do think that I was going to try to get an exact number, but we've probably got about 20% of our residents who have signed up for the online portal, which I think is really great, and I think it's a lot more than a lot of other cities have. And maybe one other comment that Tavis can maybe answer. I think when we look at 2025 data, we probably have captured 75, 80% of the city.
75%, yeah.
So we don't have quite all the information, but as Travis has worked through some of these models, he's just extrapolated that data out to, cover the missing part. 2026, everybody should be metered, so
Okay.
we'll have.
I understand. Would it cause you problems to put up, like, this is a sample chart of what we're thinking, or is that a problem?
I don't have a problem at all. I think what we'd like to come back and narrow down these options with the council and have the council select one of these options, and then we put that on the website. But I think that would be absolutely necessary for us to start implementing this education.
So when we started, I thought the staff said they liked tier cost option 1.
We like 1 and we like 3, I think.
1 and 3, but I'm hearing people on the council say they like 2.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good to narrow it down, because I think you put out too many options and then people get confused.
Yeah, I agree. And it might help the council, again, like if we can provide you with a spreadsheet that we have that shows how some of these different options affect, some of the users that we have on the system. So maybe that's our next step. We've kind of worked on those models, and then I don't know if we come back to another work session or we bring something as an action item to the city council to let you select an option.
So I'm really not a super fan of 2. I like 1 or 3 as well. I want to go with what you guys have, because I think you've done your work. I know what you guys do. So, yeah. Been in enough meetings with you.
The difference between option 2 and 3 on the actual numbers for half acre, quarter acre, they're almost the same numbers.
They're very similar.
and yet it's going from 50% tier usage to 33. I guess I'm not understanding how that could work out so closely the same.
Because we're looking at residents using their allotment. This
Just using their allotment, not up or down?
If we look at people using above or below, I think that's where you'll see some of the differences.
Okay,
And if you look at tier cost 1, option number 1 on this chart, and you compare it to the existing costs, it probably more closely comes to the existing costs that residents have if you look through the different size. But again, that's based on if they're using their allotment.
Well, option 1 I kind of like because it gives the smaller residents like my own skin in the game. It's like I got some incentive here that I've got to work on, where option 2 and 3 minimizes that a little bit. It doesn't give me quite the incentive to conserve. So I like 1.
And remind me what SF means again.
Square feet.
Square feet, okay. I thought that's what it was.
Yeah, and our base rate now is based on, a dollar amount plus your square footage at a certain percent, and all of these are kind of based on that to one degree or another.
Chris, to what Councilmember Campbell just mentioned about skin in the game for smaller lots, doesn't that actually apply more for 2 through 4 if they're overusers? Or remind me, we had this conversation earlier.
I was thinking it was more.
Okay, it is what he said.
What he
Okay,
said.
I apologize. I'm getting them all mixed up in my head, so thank you.
Math, I kind of got math.
Well, and Chris is being very polite. He actually had examples ready to go, and I told him to cut them from the presentation because I felt like it was too much to get through tonight. And so I wanted to kind of get some initial feedback from council on which philosophy did you like more, and then we would bring back to Councilmember Smith's point to narrow things a little bit, because 4 seemed like too many to give council.
And I would love to be an example. If you want to use mine, but don't mention my name, but I would love for that to happen.
We may or may not have already looked at what some of the council members may or may not have used.
Anybody else have any questions or feedback?
I guess the only thing that I have is you had asked if we wanted to come back to another work session or to have it on as an action item on an agenda. I don't have a strong feeling about a discussion item versus a work session. I don't think we're going to be ready for an action item.
No, I think we're going to have more discussions, but I think before that, we would like to see, the scenarios and some more information, and maybe schedule small meetings if we need to.
I want more discussion, but I would really love to see it. I hate to keep pushing this, but I would really love to see this up. I don't know if it would increase your questions or decrease mine, or it would increase both of our, of what I'm fielding, because I am worried that I'm not answering the questions properly. But if they could see a chart, and I know you're after options, but if we could, the citizens could actually see a chart. This is what we're thinking of, and maybe that would just cause more problems. I don't know.
Well, thinking about that, we could, I think, probably easily put something on our website right now that shows what your allotment of water should be based on your lot size.
And it is there. I was on it
there?
today,
Okay.
really looking mine over. It's there. So.
Let me suggest a plan moving forward based on the feedback I've heard, if that's okay, Madam Mayor. So it sounds like there's preference for either 1, 2, or 3 in the options. So I think we'll bring those back for a future work session and show you the examples that you've asked for and kind of answer some of those other questions that you've asked. And then from there, maybe we narrow it to 2 options, and that we really push to the public. I'm hesitant to push too much information to the public until the council can kind of help us narrow. So I'd like to wait to tell them what the future rates might be until we get down to 1 or maybe 2 options, if that's okay.
And I think it's always good, if we're going to have another work session, feel free to invite the public to come, and if they want to hear the conversation and understand it better, we're always happy to have them.
And Chris will email out this presentation, and it's also as part of our minutes, right? Anybody can obtain this. So if you want to share this now, Councilmember Rice, of course, feel free to. I think it's too much. It's a lot of data right now, and I worry that it will generate more questions, to your point.
It is. It is. If we could get it down to 1 option or 2 options and say, this is what we're thinking, but I don't know how Chris feels about attending a cottage meeting, but.
I think we're going to have to do
An
some
open house or something.
open houses, probably, honestly, when we get to the fall, right, when council's narrowed this before we, to help explain to the public, absolutely.
When the roads fee came, there were open houses, 12, 15.
That made a difference too. People appreciate that.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Thank you.
No, we appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for all your work.
You've really worked hard. I know how hard Chris and his company works. Thanks so much.
Okay, we've got future meetings coming up, Planning Commission next week, and then City Council on June 2nd, 16th, and then Planning Commission again on June 23rd. And I think that's all we have.
Correct, Mayor. And we don't have need for a work session, so a closed meeting, so we are ready for adjournment.
So
I
moved.
Second.
Perfect.
Aye.
There we go. Did you get that, Stephanie? Okay.